Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Was Banished to Unknown Lands. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 13, Spirit Wolf. Naruto, Nagi and Senjai lay on top of the wagon, shirts open, soaking in the sun. The gentle rocking of the wagon moving through the plains increased their laziness. Mabry steered the wagon cheerily while talking to Jiraiya. Inside, the voices of Sakura and Hiroka could be heard. The two of them had caught up to them before they'd even jumped into the wind stream. Senjai was deep in thought. He managed to avoid talking to Hiroka since she had joined them in Tengaku, but now they were on a mission, so to speak. It would be awkward to avoid her any further. He could hear snippets of the girls' conversation. Mabry had a large wardrobe of clothing for various ages in his wagon. He explained that most of the orphans he picked up were wearing nothing but rags, so he always had clothes to put on them. Good clothes. Neither Sakura nor Hiroka had changed into what was turning out to be the Archangel uniform of white clothes with the silver armband, so they had excitedly begun digging in Mabry's closet. He could make out small bits, such as Sakura squealing when she found a shirt she loved. Hiroka, with the scarf. Sakura, yes, matches, eyes. Hiroka, ha, he'll die. Senjai smiled for the briefest of seconds but then frowned. He did miss Hiroka, still loved her even. But she deserved someone who could give her the finer things, and he had a quest to fulfill. Hey boys. Mabry's voice boomed up at them over the wagon canvas. It's just over that hill. Senjai sighed and sat up, buttoning up his shirt, seeing his friends do the same. It was time to meet the potential new citizens of Tengaku. Kakashi watched in amazement as the brightest colored and largest wagon he had ever seen in his life crested the hill to the south of their camp. The thing was massive, easily as big as a house, and the huge donkeys pulling it were no less impressive. Within minutes the gigantic wheels brought the wagon to the center of the valley. Over the past few days more families had arrived, some lone people as well. Seems Jiraiya's spy network had done a good job of spreading the word. Steering the wagon was one of the tallest men Kakashi had ever seen, and he recognized him as a magician that Konoha had hosted many years ago. It was said that he got into a friendly spar with the Hokage. Now that had been a sight to behold. Next to him was Jiraiya, looking as smug and carefree as ever. Kakashi could sense the crowds grow behind him as the people started to gather. Out of a flap on the side of the wagon, some stairs extended, and Naruto Uzumaki stepped out. Kakashi had wondered what it would be like seeing his student again after a year. It had startled him to realize almost exactly a year had passed since he'd been expelled from Konoha. He had heard of the changes that Naruto had undergone, but seeing it was something different. His hair had grown longer and wilder, he had gained some height and some more muscles. The clothes he was wearing were startlingly white, with a gold armband that bore the symbol of Tengaku. Kakashi was stunned. Naruto looked so much like his father now, but more than that, he looked like a leader. Behind him two more boys, who had to be a couple years older than Naruto, stepped out. Both wore identical white suits, with the silver armbands of Tengaku. They took up flanking positions behind Naruto, the one with the swords to the right of Naruto, and the dark-skinned one to his left. Kakashi noticed the ease with which they slipped into that position naturally. They looked like a team that had been together for years. He felt a pang of pride in his ex-student. Naruto saw Kakashi and all the seriousness melted off his face. Kakashi-sensei! He shouted and ran and hugged the ex-Konoha Jounin. Kakashi took a step back with an oomph escaping him. Naruto squeezed him tightly and Kakashi felt happy. His student clearly had no ill will towards him for what happened in Konoha. Hi Naruto. Kakashi managed to get out. You seem well. Naruto let him go and smiled at him, stepping back. The two boys behind him smiling as well. I am sensei, thanks. Have you been here long? Kakashi nodded. A few days. Quite a thing you're doing, Naruto. Naruto shrugged happily, not responding. His eyes took in the curious faces of the people gathered. Many of them looked hopeful, some looked lost. Jiraiya walked up and touched Naruto's shoulder. He looked over at the crowd. We will be meeting with each person or family personally to talk to you. Please go back to your tents or wagons. Kakashi would have made a list. He looked over at the Jounin, who nodded. Good, so we have your names and our village leader Naruto wants to greet each of you personally. The people looked a little reluctant to go back to their wagons, but did so anyway. Jiraiya turned to Kakashi. Quite a crowd, he said matter-of-factly. The two of them had been communicating quite frequently via Toad summons. But a few days had passed, and this was more people than he had last heard. At least 100, Kakashi said. More than you estimated, and most of them came in the last 2 days. I expect more will show up while we're here. Mabry walked over. I figure we'll be here for a week to decide who comes and who doesn't. Naruto will make the final decisions with our advice. It's his village, so his final decision. Kakashi nodded. He'd been made aware of the decision to grant Naruto the leader position. He approved wholeheartedly. What criteria will you be using? He asked Naruto. Naruto looked serious. Only people with good hearts. The boys turned as Sakura and Hiroka exited the wagon. Nagi let out a low whistle. Both girls had changed into white clothing with the silver armbands, but the style of clothing was what captivated the boys' attention. Sakura had a short-sleeved white shirt with a Chinese collar similar to the one Nagi and Senjai had, but her neckline was much lower, teasing some cleavage. A firm pink coat was affixed over it that matched her hair. A short white skirt with pink trim and knee-high white and pink boots finished off her outfit. She had also found some white gloves that she was still putting on. Hiroka was wearing a white Chinese-style short dress with high collars and red tights underneath. Her red scarf was draped around her neck and flowing in the wind as if it had a life of its own. 2 pins held her hair up in a bun, while she too adjusted gloves hers elbow length on her hands. Naruto smiled. You look great, Sakura. You too, Hiroka. Senjai nodded as well and looked away. Hiroka made a face at him and grinned at Sakura with a wink. All of them walked into the caravan behind Naruto, to decide who to accept into Tengaku. Naruto's face was crestfallen as he heard the plight of the very first family he interviewed. The father had lost his business thanks to a raid on the town they lived in. They had been terrorized, his oldest son killed, leaving just him, his wife and his daughter who was 10. They hadn't escaped unscathed though. The particular warlord didn't believe in leaving survivors intact, so they had been scarred in various ways. The daughter had been cut across her cheeks, the mother across her hands, the father had lost an arm. Naruto was incensed and vowed privately to find the person or persons responsible. My trade was as a tailor. But not many people will come to a one-armed tailor. It takes longer to finish my work now. Tears were in the man's eyes. But if you give me a chance in your new village, I swear I'll work faster than you can believe. Please, I need somewhere to raise my family, to earn a living. Please. Naruto's eyes filled with tears as did his friends. He walked forward and put his hands on the man's shoulders. You will be more than welcome to join our village. Your family will be safe and you can live your life in peace, Naruto said. Jiraiya frowned a bit at that, but said nothing till they were outside the tent. Naruto, it's all well and good to offer these people hope, but you do realize that we're still a hidden ninja village? It's almost guaranteed that at some point there won't be peace. At some point there will be battles and people could get hurt. I know, Sensei, but he doesn't need to hear that right now. And I will do all I can to protect every single man, woman, and child of my village, Naruto replied without missing a step, walking towards the next tent. Kakashi looked on with pride as Naruto went from tent to tent, talking to the families that had been gathered and accepting them into Tengaku. For the most part, Jiraiya's spies had spread the word only to families that would fit the desired mold, but Kakashi had been here for a few days and had his doubts about a few. It was now late evening and Naruto was now entering one such tent. The patriarch of a family of 4 grown sons, the swarthy man had riches draped over him and he reeked of cheap perfume. His face was made up in what was clearly women's makeup and he laughed in a way that made it known he thought little of you. Naruto looked at him and took an instant dislike. But he pushed that aside, determined to not judge someone based on first impressions and give everyone a fair hearing. The man sized up Naruto and laughed. Who are you supposed to be? Which of you men are in charge of this new village? He said, dismissing Naruto and glancing from Mabry to Jiraiya. Mabry looked at the man with disgust. He'd met this type before, and he loathed men like this. Naruto cleared his throat. I am the leader of Tengaku, mister. He ended the statement with a polite question, to allow the man time to respond. The man laughed and sneered at Naruto. How interesting. I did not expect someone so young. He scoffed, and then waved his hand at his 4 sons. These are my boys. We would like to set up a branch in your city. We run our specialty shops in almost every major city in the Western lands. It honors your village for me to even consider building there. I expect lenient property taxes because I will provide employment and inject funds, shall we say, into your hands. He smirked at Naruto. Naruto looked perplexed. What sort of specialty shop do you run? The man laughed. We offer a wide variety of herbal remedies for many ailments, as well as massages for very specific clientele. Jiraiya looked at him scornfully. You run an opium den and a brothel. While he didn't mind a few beautiful women around, this was not the way to start the kind of village that Naruto wanted. He did want to see how Naruto handled the situation though. Naruto looked startled. He looked from the man to his 4 grinning sons for any sign that Jiraiya's words were not true. But they just laughed it off. He looked at the patriarch and cleared his throat. We don't want your shop in our village, but thank you for your interest. Naruto did in his best imitation of what he thought Old Man Hokage would have said. In truth, he wanted to jump up and point at them and tell them to get the hell out of there now, but that wouldn't give the right impression of his, and that word was still scary to him, his village. The swarthy man looked amused. I see. Many village leaders are not wise enough to accept our initial offer. But I guarantee that they always take the follow-up offer. Naruto spun on heel and walked out the tent without letting the man finish. Mabry grinned. I don't think we're very interested in your next offer. Feel free to take your time and pack up your things, but do leave soon. Naruto's friends and mentors filed out behind him. He breathed deeply as he waited for them to catch up. He turned to Jiraiya. Something about him just smelled off. Jiraiya nodded. Not a nice man or a nice family. Extremely wealthy, of course. Kakashi chimed in. There are 5 or 6 such wealthy, yet questionable, families in this encampment. Jiraiya's spy network is not infallible. Such men will always find a way to wiggle their way in where they see opportunity. Senjai looked angry. We're trying to build an honest village here. I don't understand why they think we'd welcome an opium den and a brothel. Nagi shrugged. The opium den, I agree with you, but a brothel is just another business. Many villages I've encountered that are perfectly peaceful have such a place. Once the women aren't forced to work there. Jiraiya agreed. Very common. But that man in particular would be a dark mark in our village. He could have been running an ice cream shop, and I still wouldn't have liked him coming along. Naruto shivered. Okay. Next tent? Nagi looked around. Hey, where did we lose the girls? Kakashi smiled. They stopped about 2 wagons back. Playing with the babies. Twin babies that were probably the cutest either girl had ever seen, in fact. Naruto smiled and headed for the next tent. 2 men watched from the shadows outside the opium dealer's tent. They turned to each other, then melted back into the shadows and snuck out of the encampment. They crept and snuck their way over the crest of the hill into the nearby forest. The sound of an owl hooting as they entered the woods made them stop in their tracks. It's us, the man whispered urgently into the night. An arrow whizzed close to his head. He growled up into the trees. What the hell? That was a warning. It's us is not the damn password. A voice floated down from the trees. The 2 men grumbled and stalked deeper into the woods. After a few minutes they came upon a camp. Around a campfire sat roughly 37 men. They laughed as one told a tale of treasure and plundering, for this was a camp of thieves. At what was clearly the seat of power in the camp sat a tall brown-skinned man. His hair tied back in ponytail, a short beard and mustache on his young face. Small gold-hooped earrings and a gold ring with the symbol of a wolf were the only 2 pieces of jewelry he wore. His eyes, though, seemed to watch everything and nothing at the same time. The 2 men approached him and the other men grew quiet. My lord, it was as our snitch said. There are 5 or 6 very wealthy wagons in the encampment. There are no guards. But there are a few ninja in the camp. They seem to be picking people to take somewhere. One of the men reported. The leader sat back. Ninja? What are they doing this far west? I do not know, my lord, the same man responded. One thief stood up. It matters not. Many riches lay in those wagons. We will raid the camp and take what we want and be gone by dawn. The other thieves looked like they were about to cheer, and would have probably, if a dagger hadn't flipped through the air and sliced the loud thief's left ear off. His hand clutched the bleeding side of his head and he fell to his knees. The leader stood up and walked over to retrieve his knife. Did I miss the meeting where you were chosen for my position, Krishna? As he spoke, his eyes took on a dangerous steely color. No, no, my lord Ali, the thief gritted out through his teeth. His anger barely kept in control. Ali looked around at his men. No one should think for 1 second that they can presume to decide when we attack, nor whom. He sat back down. The fact that there are ninja in the camp complicates things. It means we could lose men. There are only a few of us here who could fight toe-to-toe with a ninja. We need a much more solid plan than we attack at dawn. The men smiled wickedly. The leader of this band of thieves was always chosen not just for his skills, but for his cunning. The Spirit Wolf clan will show those fat merchants that the common man needs to live as well. Here is how we will do it. Naruto took a lot of convincing to stop interviews for the night and continue in the morning. He settled into Mabry's wagon and closed his eyes, hands behind his head, thinking. It had taken a lot to hear all the stories his new citizens told him. They were tales of suffering, abuse, and woe. Many were running, some looking to start over. This part of the world was much larger than the civilized part he came from, and many things he took for granted simply weren't true here. Naruto hoped he could do right by these people. He now had citizens for his village. People who weren't warriors or warriors in training. Nagi and Senjai had stayed up talking, and Sakura and Hiroka were still in the camp somewhere. Naruto closed his eyes and hoped that tomorrow he would make good decisions. Just before dawn, when most people's guard is down, 40 thieves entered the camp. They split up into 6 teams. 5 went after the target wagons, and 1 went into various normal wagons, taking hostages and tying them up. Ali's plan was simple: if there was trouble, they'd use the hostages as collateral to escape. His 2 scouts had told him the ninja were all around the massive colored wagon, so once they were quiet and avoided that wagon, they should be okay. What Ali did not know was that Sakura and Hiroka had fallen asleep by the kindly single mother with the cute twin babies. So when the thieves snuck into the tent to tie up some more hostages, they didn't meet an unsuspecting civilian, but 2 very angry kunoichi. Sakura felt the malevolent presence in the tent and was standing in a flash, a mere second after Hiroka did. They saw 4 shadows, all of whom seemed to be startled to find them there. A glint of steel in one of the intruders' hands warned Sakura that they were armed with knives. She glanced at Hiroka, who had snaked her scarf out and was in a ready-to-attack position. As Hiroka lashed out with the scarf, Sakura turned and picked up the sleeping twins in either hand and dove out the back of the tent. The mother woke up to the sight of Hiroka fending off the intruders and her babies nowhere to be seen. She screamed loudly. Loud enough to wake up the entire camp. Ali cursed in his native tongue. He was sneaking up on a fat, swarthy merchant when the scream awoke his target. The man lunged for a sword, but to no avail. Ali buried his dagger in the base of the man's neck and turned to his 2 followers at the door. Take what you can from this tent and meet us back base camp. I will have to go and deal with the ninja, he said as he strode out the door. What's going on? Naruto asked as he rushed out of the wagon with his bow's staff. Nagi and Senjai landed on the ground next to him. Kakashi appeared as well. It seems we have intruders in the camp. Thieves. Naruto's eyes grew dark. Thieves? Someone is stealing from these people? All he could think of was the stories of persecution and the unjust way of life these people he had accepted as citizens had been subjected to. They're all over the camp, Jiraiya said as he threw 2 men to the ground in front of Naruto. They were the symbol of the Spirit Wolf clan, a feared clan of thieves from far south. Naruto nodded and made the sign for Kage Bunshin. He made 50 clones and sent them into the wagons and tents, searching for the thieves. Within seconds the sounds of fighting could be heard. Naruto's face looked startled. I lost a few clones. There's a tall man walking towards us. He's defending the other thieves from my clones. They're all running away. Mabry appeared as well with a single thief over his shoulder. They certainly use a fighting style I've never seen before. No sooner did he say that than 2 of Naruto's clones flew backwards into the clearing where they stood in front of Mabry's wagon and poofed out of existence. The tall man Naruto had spoken about entered the clearing. His eyes darted to the thieves on the ground. I've come for my men. Release them and we can forget this happened, Ali said calmly. Nagi and Senjai looked at each other and lunged at the man. Senjai drew his sword and swung, Nagi sweeping for the man's legs. Ali, however, ducked under Senji's swing and twisted in mid-air over Nagi's swipe. His hand reached for his belt and pulled on a hilt. A long sword uncoiled from around his waist and lashed out at Senji, who just managed to block it with the broad side of his sword. Jiraiya cursed under his breath. "And Urami?" Kakashi nodded. "That means—" Ali landed on his feet and twirled the sword around him a few times. "My name is Ali of the Spirit Wolf clan, and I am a master of Kalaripeatu. Please do not force me to fight further. I will just take my men and leave." Naruto growled and jumped into the fray. He used the bow as a spear, poking towards Ali, who turned and pivoted, slashing the bow aside with his flexible sword. Senji came from the side with both of his swords, twirling them impossibly fast and slicing towards Ali. His slashes too were deflected by the skilled thief. Ali then started to press his attack, the sword snaking around Naruto's bow and slicing into his shoulder. He grimaced as he felt the cut as a burn, but his healing ability was already working close to the cut. Senji had so far managed to avoid being injured, but barely. He was sweating, never had he been so hard pressed by a fellow swordsman. Despite himself and the circumstances, Senji couldn't help but smile. This is what a true swordsman was like. Senji was finally being pushed past his limits. Ali flicked his wrist, and the Urami snaked around him like a tornado. He flicked it again, and extended his arm, and suddenly the razor-sharp tornado was racing towards Senji. He saw it in time though and flashed stepped backwards towards the wagon and away from the fight. "Damn," he said, panting. "He's so fast." Kakashi agreed, he'd never seen someone fight so fluidly as that before. Naruto is only surviving at this point because of his healing ability. Oh, and also because Ali doesn't seem to want to kill anyone. Senji looked incredulous at Kakashi, but then he looked closer at the fight. Kakashi was right. The master thief was twirling the coiled sword effortlessly, and with much more skill than Naruto was using the bow's staff. But he was clearly holding back on many openings to seriously injure the blonde ninja. Naruto seemed to notice this as well. "Why are you holding back?" he asked as he swung the bow's staff at the thief's head. Ali ducked and turned on the balls of his feet. He stood and lashed out in a kick that they all swore ended with his knee in his own face, his legs straight as an arrow. The kick did land, however, and sent Naruto flying backwards. He managed to flip in midair and landed on his feet though. "I have no desire to kill children," Ali said. Jiraiya grunted, he had suspected as much. The Spirit Wolf clan was mostly feared by rich criminals and merchants who cheated their customers. There were more than a few tales of the clan helping the less fortunate. A band of cutthroats they most certainly weren't. So why were they here robbing these unfortunates? "Why are you here, Ali?" Jiraiya asked. "Most of these people have no money." Ali nodded and swished his sword in front of him. "There were 5 or 6 wealthy men we've been following. They were scattered throughout your little operation here. We were supposed to be in and out, but it seems some of my men ran into your female ninja." Jiraiya nodded, it made sense. "I'd let you leave with your men, but it's really up to Naruto here." Naruto looked over at Ali. The man had to be in his early 30s, and he was so skilled with a sword. "Why live a life like this?" Naruto asked him, dropping his attack posture. "Why live as a thief?" Ali smirked at the young man before him. He recognized that look. "I don't need your pity, boy. This life has been my family's life for generations. It is a proud tradition that I am honored to carry on. The Spirit Wolf clan is a proud clan, a proud family." Nagi and Senji nodded. They understood what Ali meant. Tradition and honor. Naruto shook his head. "Come with us." "What?" Jiraiya, Kakashi, Senji and Nagi all said simultaneously. Naruto smiled warmly at Ali. "The old man used to say you never really know someone until you fight them. You've got a good heart, Ali. You should come with us." Ali looked baffled. He took a step backwards as if expecting some sort of trick. But the smile on Naruto's face was genuine and open. He was shocked. "What are you talking about? Go where?" Ali asked. Naruto launched into an explanation of his village, without giving away its location, after a hard stare from Jiraiya, and again extended his invitation. Ali laughed. "What's your name?" he asked Naruto, not unkindly. "My name is Naruto. These are my friends Senji and Nagi. And this is my sensei, Jiraiya, and our friend Mabry." Ali's eyes took them all in. "I've heard of most of you. As I said, I have no wish to fight you, I will just take my men and leave. He turned towards Naruto. Naruto, I wish you all the best for your village. My clan, however, does not stay in one place. Often the criminals we steal from look for revenge, and it would not do for us to bring such troubles to your village. Naruto grinned even wider. You've just proven my point even more. You worry more for the ordinary people than you do yourself. You belong in our village, he declared. Ali grinned. Naruto's smile was infectious. I do not think so, Naruto, but thank you. The three thieves on the ground began to get up. Kakashi helped one to his feet. They eyed the ninja around them suspiciously as their leader motioned for them to come over. A woman's scream shattered the clearing as 5 thieves ran into it. One had a woman in front of him, a blade pressed against her neck. Chasing them were Sakura and Hiroka, and one other girl that didn't surprise Kakashi in the least. Krishna! Ali barked out. The man holding the woman turned and snarled at Ali. Release that woman now, Ali commanded. Krishna sneered and looked to the woman. Naruto saw it happen in slow motion, as if he had the Sharingan itself. But then the horrible moments in life always do seem to go more slowly. Krishna sliced the woman's throat open and flung her body to the side. I'm tired of you telling me what to do, he yelled at Ali. Just because your father was leader doesn't mean you should have been. I will take what is mine. He lunged at Ali with what looked like a dagger, but its hilt was shaped so that it needed to be held like a fist punching. Ali sidestepped and pulled out a similar-looking dagger. The two of them began battling each other in the middle of the clearing. Naruto appeared at the dead woman's side and picked up her body. He harassed back to the wagon and rested her down, angry and sad at his inability to prevent her death. The other 4 thieves came under the full wrath of the women who were chasing them. Hiroka stood low to the ground, one leg extended forward, the other pulled underneath herself. Her scarf held between her hands. She sprung forward and lashed out with the scarf, the material smacking the first dagger-wielding thief in the face. He snarled at her and slashed wildly with the dagger to no avail. Sakura ducked under a dagger thrust and punched the first man in the solar plexus. Remembering what Tsunade taught her, the secret of the Futi no Kiwami, she used that double punch on the man. The result was the thief being flung out of the clearing, out of the camp, and halfway to the forest. The third girl fighting was not someone that Naruto knew, but she was doing pretty well. She was using a bow to send arrow after arrow at the 2 remaining thieves. They had so far gotten 2 arrows in their legs, but kept running anyway. Kakashi said out loud to no one in particular, "That's Calamity." Calamity threw down her larger bow and pulled out 2 short crossbows from her belt. A torrent of small bolts flew like saban towards the thieves, hitting them in their back, knocking them to the ground. Even from this distance, Kakashi could see that they weren't mortally wounded. Either they were very lucky or Calamity was a dead shot. He saw her grinning at him and he smiled, assuming the latter. As the girls finished their fights, all eyes went to the battle between Ali and Krishna. It had become a vicious dance. As good as Krishna seemed to be, Ali was clearly a master. Nicks and cuts adorned Krishna's arms, while Ali had barely 1 or 2. Krishna in desperation flung the dagger at Ali, and then made some hand signs that none of the ninja gathered there recognized. He breathed out a steady stream of fire that formed a wolf. The flame wolf raced towards Ali. Ali again pulled out his coiled sword and twirled it madly, too fast for the eye to see. The flame wolf was dissipated by the assault. Krishna fell to his knees in defeat, panting. Ali's eyes grew cold, and he made some hand signs himself. He then pointed at Krishna. A torrent of ghostly wolves appeared from behind Ali out of thin air and sprinted towards Krishna. They passed through him, each taking what looked like piece of Krishna's soul with them. As the final one passed through him, he fell to the ground dead, his skin white and drawn tight over a skeletal body. Naruto stood in shock. Nagi and Senji as well wiped sweat away from their foreheads. The man they had fought against was in a different class from them entirely. Kakashi saw Naruto's expression and tried to explain. Ali is a master of Kalaripeya to Naruto. It is probably the oldest martial art in the world. It's called the mother of all martial arts. But that aside, he is at a master level. I doubt even I would have an easy time facing him in battle. What move was that? Naruto asked. Kakashi knew what Naruto was referring to, but didn't have the answer. That move you called it, Naruto, is a secret of my clan. What Krishna did was abominable and I apologize. That woman, he said with sadness. Did she have a family? Sakura turned towards Ali angrily. Not sure of what just happened, but knowing the answer to that question. She did, a boy. 7 years old. Ali nodded. According to our custom, that boy is now my clan's responsibility. We will raise him. Please bring him to me. Hiroka snapped her cloth. Hell no! Shabi! She adopted a defensive stance. Sakura herself also took a ready stance, both quite incensed. Wait! Jiraiya interjected. Naruto, this is the custom of their clan, of their region. It would be remiss of us to deny them the chance to atone. Naruto growled. They lost that right when they killed this woman. Why should I allow them to take her son? That just makes no sense to me. Ali nodded. We are responsible for that child's safe upbringing now since we robbed him of it. Naruto shook his head. But we have an orphanage, and a new village. He would be better off with us. He'd be safer for one, and have a chance to grow up with other kids his own age for another. Ali stood firm. No! This is my clan's honor at stake. You cannot seek to deprive us of this right. The boy will grow up as a spirit wolf. There is no more talking on this. Naruto growled, waves of chakra rolling off of him. Ali felt it hitting him like the heat of the sun. He dare not show it on his face, but this level of chakra was unheard of, and frightening. What was Naruto? We will do as I say, thief. Naruto growled. His voice sounded vaguely hoarse and his eyes gave off a faint red glow. Jiraiya rested his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Calm down, Naruto. We can work out a compromise. Ali raised an eyebrow. Compromise? How? Jiraiya smiled. Well, Naruto insists that the boy come to Tengaku. You insist your clan raises him. Why not open a guild house in Tengaku and staff it with 1 or 2 of your men? Your trusted men, of course. That way the boy can still be raised as a Spirit Wolf clan member. Sakura shouted. No way! They just killed this woman in cold blood, and now we're just going to hand her son over to her murderers. Ali shook his head. Krishna was a bad seed. He and his friends have always been a problem for my clan. Now that they're gone, the rest of my men I trust completely. He turned to Jiraiya and Naruto. I do not understand why you are so willing to welcome a den of thieves into your new village. It sounds like you are trying to create an idyllic place, but the world does not allow such a place to exist. My clan has found a way to survive out here in the unnamed country. But we are still thieves. Jiraiya chimed in. You don't rob the poor and destitute. There are rumors of your clan assisting people in times of need. Robbing the rich, the criminal, and giving money to the poor. You cannot say that you are bad people. Hiroka and Sakura slowly began to let down their guard. Based on what Jiraiya was saying, perhaps they were misjudging the tall brown-skinned man in front of them. Ali cleared his throat. For 7 generations my clan has roamed the Western world, not always has our reputation been thus. It depends on who leads. Nagi interjected. Right now you lead. What do you intend to lead your men to? Ali stared at the warriors gathered around him. The 3 clan members he rescued were helping the ones the girls had chased and subdued. He turned to Jiraiya and Naruto. I accept this compromise. I myself will come to Tengaku with 2 of my clan. We will set up our guild house there and then I shall leave. Once the boy is raised by us I have no problem with where. But he must come with us often. Part of living as a Spirit Wolf clan member is traveling as a clan. Naruto grinned. Then in that case, I'm glad to welcome you to my village. Ali shook his head. You don't know what you may have just called upon your village, but all right. The Spirit Wolf clan will be based out of Tengaku from this day onward. Konoha Forest. Deep in the forest outside of Konoha, Danzo stood in a clearing waiting for the person he was meeting to arrive. This meeting was far too important and secretive to take place inside the walls of Konoha. He knew that surrounding him were 10 of his best root ninja for safety. He may be doing a deal here, but by no means did that mean he trusted the man. No sooner did he think it than the man appeared alone. Danzo was no fool though, and knew the man was not alone, and had brought along at least as many men as he had. Danzo, the diminutive man in front of him, said. Anoki. Danzo nodded back. The 3rd Tsuchikage was a small man, but not one to be underestimated. Let's get right to business, shall we? Anoki said. Your plan is going well? Yes, Danzo said. Our assassination of the daimyo went perfectly. My route had infiltrated his guard and left big enough gaps for our assassin to execute him believably. His successor is being chosen as we speak from the worthless royal court, and then I expect we will be ordered to attack IWA. Anoki nodded. Good. I'll have my army ready. Good. We are still weak after the attack from Orochimaru a year ago. But those bleeding hearts in Konoha are useless to me. They must be purged. My root runs deep and strong. Konoha will rebuild once all remnants of the old school of thought are burned from memory. Danzo claimed quietly. It's an ambitious plan, Danzo. Just remember our agreement. Anoki said menacingly. He trusted Danzo no more than he did a scorpion in his shoe. I shall stand by my word. Our battle will serve to remove the useless ninja of Konoha, and I will be inviting the entire Fire Country Royal Court to witness the battle. And I shall do the same, the Earth Country Royal Court will come to witness. Anoki said. You take care of my problem and I'll take care of yours. No longer shall these fools run our affairs. Danzo said, turning and disappearing into the forest. Anoki watched him go with distaste, but he did admire the man's audacity and planning. Soon there will be no more daimyo, no more pandering. We'll see how your village fares with no one holding us back, Danzo, he whispered just under his breath before disappearing back from whence he came. Tengaku. Tsunade watched in amazement as the newer batch of Naruto clones tore through the construction. They had averaged a floor a day on the tower, the pipes were run all over the lots they had planned out, and electricity was now coming into the main tower. The newer clones were stronger because Naruto himself had grown stronger. All the experience they had gained by building everything in this village was showing too, as all the work seemed to get done faster and easier. Guerrera had started work on a new building for the academy. His building designs were all very similar. White walls, huge Gothic columns. The whole heavenly theme permeated into all the buildings he had planned. He even drew up some plans on renovating and expanding the orphanage that he wanted to show Mabry when he returned. Tsunade, however, was more focused on the need for a proper medical clinic. They had over 200 children in the village already, and a large portion of them were training to be warriors. They were going to need that clinic soon. According to the map, she could see where Guerrera planned to erect the clinic, and it was right next to the academy. That was good, as far as Tsunade was concerned. She wanted some kids to learn how to be medics. The patriarch of the Kazumi clan walked over to her. Tsunade, I had a thought. She stopped looking at the papers and waited for him to continue. I know Jiraiya was trying to figure out a way to protect the village better. He booby-trapped the wind tunnel that brings us here. But I may actually know someone who can help, Tora said. Tsunade smiled. Really? How? He's an inventor I met a few times over the course of my family's travels. He's a bit on the crazy side, but he is a genius I've never met the like of. He merges chakra and technology to invent, well, crazy things. And this island being what it is, we need a crazy invention to protect it. The old man said, smiling all the while, hoping that Tsunade would approve of his idea. He blushed brightly. He knew Tsunade was younger than him, though not as young as that illusion technique made her look, but she sure was pretty to look at. Tsunade rubbed her chin. Sounds good to me. How do you intend to find him? Tora smiled and put 4 rocks down on the marble floor. He made a series of signs and then touched them. The rocks became owls that flapped their wings and waited for his instructions. Find the inventor Kenichi Tenma. Give him and no one else this paper. Tora held out a small piece of paper to each of the owls. Tsunade frowned. How are they going to find him? Ah, but they're not ordinary owls, they're tracking owls. They can find anyone once I give them a name. But I made 4 to send them in the 4 different directions to maximize our chance for success anyway. Tora replied. Okay, good, Tsunade said. Now about your eyes fixating on my breasts. She glared menacingly at Tora, who yelped and scampered away. Tsunade smiled and went back to her work, planning the clinic for Tengaku. Chapter 14. The Valley of Death, Konoha. A soft breeze blew through the sleepy streets of Konoha. At this hour of the night, hardly anyone was awake save for the standard complement of guards stationed around the city. One such guard, Shinta, stood at his position at the southern entrance to the city and lit his cigarette, careful to cover the light of the flame from view so as not to give away his position. He wasn't a complete moron after all. He pulled his Chunin jacket on tighter, hoping to keep the wind from chilling him even further. His eyes did a quick check of his perimeter and found nothing to be alarmed by. Despite the rumblings of a pending war between Iwagakure and Konohagakure, nothing had been declared as yet. Most Konohanin though found it odd that Danzo had not ordered an increase in patrols or guards. Shinta scoffed. He, like most ninja he knew, didn't trust Danzo for a second. Even in their minds they couldn't refer to him as the Hokage. Somehow that title just didn't seem to belong to him. He sighed and pulled on his cigarette. 2 more hours till sunrise, he thought. I think I'll have. A well-thrown kunai pierced Shinta's head and prevented him from ever finishing that thought. 5 shadows slipped through the gate and into Konoha, leaving Shinta a lifeless lump in the dirt, the slow burn of his unfinished cigarette smoldering next to him. The shadows didn't make the mistake of going to the Konoha rooftops. Such a move would just silhouette them against the night sky. They moved with intense speed through the shadows of alleyways and dimly lit streets. The map they had memorized serving them well as they split off into one-man missions. The names on their list would die tonight. It was a little-known fact in Konoha that Madogai was a very light sleeper. He would say that the fire of youthful flames kept smoldering and would not be contained even in slumber. Whatever the reason, the shadow that approached his apartment expected to find a sleeping jounin who specialized in taijutsu, so he should have been an easy kill for a ninjutsu expert. As he slid open the canvas screen door, however, the fist that crushed his nose was far from the sight of a slumbering martial artist that he had expected. Like a true ninja, though, he did not let a little pain slow down his purpose. In one fluid movement, he stepped forward with his right leg and drew the sword from its scabbard on his left hip. With a soft whistle, the blade sliced through the air. He looked around frantically. The man had disappeared. With a guttural laugh, Madogai landed feet first on top of the intruder's head, crushing him downwards into a heap on the floor. The intruder spun with the impact and twirled, fingers making quick hand seals. He fully intended to bring a torrent of stones down on Guy. His earth-type jutsu were the best of the IWA assassination squad. However, Guy moved faster than his fingers could form the seals, and the intruder tasted the sole of Guy's boot. The side kick sent him crashing headfirst through the concrete wall and into oblivion. Asuma and Kurenai were walking back to his apartment after a very nice night out, when the 2 assassins found them. A fist made of stone rose out of the ground and tried to snatch Kurenai. Simultaneously, a brace of shuriken raced their way to Asuma. He dodged the shuriken effortlessly, parrying some with his knives, only to realize that some were also illusions. Shit, he thought to himself. It was infinitely harder in the heat of battle to discern illusions when they were mixed in with real weapons. He squinted his eyes seriously, glancing over to ensure that Kurenai was all right. She had disappeared from the grip of the fist. The rocks seemed to be tracking something moving. Asuma assumed it was her under the guise of a genjutsu, trying to find the source of their attack. He trusted in her to handle her opponent, and pumped chakra into his blades. He too needed to find his assailant. Another brace of shuriken flew at him, this time numbering at least 20. He dodged, ducked, and blocked, this time one nicking his arm. Another set of the deadly projectiles came, this time as many as 40. Asuma growled and jumped directly into them. He had seen the shadow that was his assailant. Asuma passed through a few illusionary shuriken, and twirled in midair, landing with a side swipe at the discernible shadow. He felt his legs connect and knew he had just caught the man off guard, not having expected a counterattack. On instinct, Asuma continued his spin and raised higher off the ground, pivoting on his left foot. As he made a full circle, his right foot lashed out at the ninja who was falling in midair from the side swipe kick. The effect was brutal as his boot connected with unprotected ribs. Asuma heard them crunch as the man got thrown into the street. He saw him breathe painfully for a few seconds, then stop altogether. Apparently he had crushed the man's lungs. Kurenai was having similar success against her assailant. He clearly had planned to kill her with the first blow. His subsequent attacks were clearly weaker. She supposed his chakra capacity could just be low, but that really was none of her concern. She found him in the shadow of the closed and darkly lit noodle stand. The ninja was frantically doing jutsu after jutsu, trying to find her. She managed to get right behind him before he noticed, and by then it was too late. Her dagger slipped quietly between his ribs, and he died looking at the ghost who had stabbed him. The 4th intruder found Ibiki waiting for him quietly in his room. There were 2 placings for tea, and Ibiki gestured to the open chair. The ninja was startled and faltered for just a few seconds from his mission, trying to comprehend. He shook it off though and reached for his shuriken. Ibiki smiled at the man who prepared to attack him. Instead, he fell to the ground unconscious. Ibiki sipped his tea and opened a window, breathing in the fresh air. The odorless poison was strong enough to knock out his would-be assassin for a day. Long enough to move him to somewhere secure to be interrogated. Ibiki smirked. His sources had told him less than a minute ago of the attack. The informant was awfully knowledgeable about the incursion, including the targets. Ibiki hoped that 3 of the targets were okay. The 4th he had no concerns for. The 5th intruder stared at the empty house. It showed no sign of being lived in for at least a couple weeks, enough for a thin layer of dust had settled in. He cursed. Kakashi was clearly not in the village at the moment. His target was not there, so he had to meet back up with the others. Of all the IWA assassins, Kagoro was the only one to have ever faced his target before in battle. That was many years ago, of course, and it had been a stalemate then, although the scar running across Kagoro's chest where Kakashi's Raikiri had narrowly missed was a burning reminder that he had almost lost. He turned to go when the markers on his arm pinched one by one. He glanced at the temporary tattoos assigned on this mission as one by one they were crossed off. That meant the others were either dead or captured. He raced for one of the exits to the village that he had memorized. He knew the consequences of being captured, and that lent speed to his movements. Unfortunately, it seemed as if someone had raised the alarm and he could feel 3, no maybe 4, ninja chasing him. He swore violently and made several hand seals, almost there. 5 seconds later, and he could feel the ninja almost upon him, just as he finished his jutsu. He puffed into a cloud of dust and raced back into the forest. The ANBU following him saw the small dust cloud go, and even fired off a few kunai and shuriken that passed right through it. Iwagakure. 2 nondescript men walked into the village of Iwagakure, dressed as traders and with bags of goods. Absolutely nothing gave away the fact that they were ninja of the leaf, and had an arsenal hidden amongst the bags, and under their clothes. They approached the very center of the busy marketplace of the city. An almost imperceptible signal was exchanged between them, and then the larger of the 2 thrust his hands into his robes and came up clutching handfuls of kunai with explosive tags attached. He threw the kunai in one movement in an arc first to the north, and then in a repeat of his movements, to the south of the market. Several bystanders were hit by the kunai, even though they weren't specifically aimed at people. The screams started almost immediately, and the IWA ninja police raced towards the 2 men. In the blink of an eye, the world changed. The collective force of the simultaneous explosions rocked the city. Dust and debris flung high into the midday sky. Bodies and body parts rained down on the city. The devastation was incredible. The ninja police found the 2 intruders unscathed in the center of the market. The smaller one was making seals and chanting. The police could see a barely discernible dome over the 2 of them. The larger one readied another round of tags inside the dome. The head of the IWA police force, Tatsui, was no fool. This was a coordinated attack, and those 2 ninja were clearly a team accustomed to working together. They expected them to try to attack them, kill them. He made some quick hand seals and slammed his fist into the ground. A dome of rock formed out of the ground, moving up and shifting until finally the hole at the top of the dome was filled, sealing the 2 inside. Another ninja police officer ran up and touched the dome of rock. As he did so, it hardened even further into near steel. His clan ability being one that can refine the minerals found in dirt. Very useful when your country's jutsu were earth-based. A faint vibration of the dome told the police that the 2 had tried to blast their way out. The head of police shook his head. Inside that dome with no escape, no air, the explosion would have killed them, and if it didn't, the sudden loss of all the oxygen would have. He surveyed the damage in the marketplace. It was disheartening to think that all these innocent people had died so brutally. He couldn't know for sure, but he felt strongly that the 2 were Konohanin. He saw a trader close to him struggling to get to his feet. He reached over and held out his hand with a concerned look. "Come on, I'll help you to the hospital," he said. As he looked into the man's eyes, he felt warning bells go off in his brain, but it was far too late, of course, to do anything about it. Tatsuya became slightly glassy-eyed and then straightened his back and walked away without a word. The man on the ground collapsed back down. The war they'd all heard rumblings about had officially started. Danzo surveyed his gathered jounin and chunin. They lined the southern edge of a large valley with heavy forests, a small lake, and a river running through it. It was the perfect battlefield for ninja, and it was where they stare across the distance at the IWA army. He could see the banner of the IWA Royal Court, there to witness the glory of their army's victory. He smirked and glanced left. The Fire Country Royal Court was off to the opposing side, perched where they could clearly see the battlefield. The fools thought this would be entertaining. His primary ninja force stood behind him. He knew that many were unwilling participants, but that did not matter. They were still Konoha ninja, and fierce loyalty to Konoha would drive them to fight. He spoke loudly for them to hear. I know many of you hate me, but I care not for such foolishness. Ahead is our enemy, the enemy of Konoha, the enemy of our daimyo. That is all you should care about. Look at them, hate them, kill them. We take no prisoners today. There was a bristling in the gathered ninja and an almost perceptible electric current in the air. Danzo squinted and looked into the valley where the IWA ninja had begun to enter. Go, he ordered, and his ninja vanished from behind him and headed to the battlefront. Rock Lee, Ten-Ten and Niji raced down the hill, Guy leading the way. They would be the second line of attack as close-range fighters. The long-range ninjutsu experts would be firing off salvos about now. As if on cue, fireballs flew the length of the valley towards the IWA side. However, a whistling sound signaled that the IWA long-range experts were also engaging. Boulders the size of Chuji in cannonball mode rained down upon them. Lee and his team dodged them effortlessly, racing for the clash up ahead. Guy made several hand signals while running. The team didn't bother to respond as Guy's back was to them. They broke rank and split off into different directions, making a sprinting circle to meet 50 meters ahead where Guy had spotted the enemy racing towards them. A 5-man team of rock ninja emerged from the foliage. The one who was clearly the leader rushed at Guy. The other 4 hanging back slightly, looking for other Konoha nin. They were not disappointed as Lee was a whirlwind of kicks and punches, taking 2 IWA nin to the ground with broken bones. Ten-Ten exploded out of a bush and threw a brace of kunai at her target. He pulled a wall of dirt from the ground to block them, and created spikes of rock which erupted and seemed to chase after Ten-Ten. She took to the air in a massive jump and unleashed a hailstorm of weapons. The ninja tried to block and dodge, but there were too many. He pulled a kiwarema, only to find as he appeared that Ten-Ten had faster reflexes than he did and threw a kunai directly into his chest. Niji was a blur of hand thrusts. His enemy was quick, but no match one-on-one for his deadly palm strikes. This was no Chunin match, so Niji held no punches. Each strike incapacitated, permanently. The man shrieked in pain as Niji's last strike caused his heart to explode. Guy was a force of nature. There was a reason he was as feared as Kakashi was. His taijutsu was unstoppable. Using his elbows to ward off hand strikes from the rock nin, Guy's fists flew into the man's head, neck and chest. In circular hits, Guy hit the man in his chest 10, 20, 50 times as he fell backwards onto the grassy forest floor. He looked up at his team, glad they were all okay. Hearing a unique whistling noise coming closer, he looked up and saw a huge boulder almost upon them. Move! Guy shouted and they dove out of the way as the round rock crashed and rolled back towards the Konoha side. Shikamaru hid in the thick leaves of an oak tree. Asuma stood below the tree, pressed against it, knives drawn. Their tactic was going to be an ambush, waiting for IWA ninja to pass by. Ino was also hidden. Chuji stood ready to support Asuma in any actual attacks. A lone rock nin came crashing through the bushes. He saw Asuma by the tree and made some hand signs. The ground fell away into a sinkhole, causing the tree Shikamaru was in to collapse. He dared not give away his position though, so he held on tight as the tree fell. Ino concentrated and pushed the man's mind to the side as she took over his body. His friend showed up a second later, and he turned on them and buried a kunai into one's chest. He gurgled and collapsed, taking her slash him down with him. Ino left his body just as another rock ninja speared him. Asuma ran in with his knives, battling the spear wielder. Shikamaru had recovered by now and latched his shadow technique onto the man. He froze with his spear extended and Asuma slid in and cut his throat. Ino looked away from the blood. It wasn't a fair fight, but as Asuma told them before they left Konoha, this was war. Shino, Kiba and Hinata stood at the side of the new daimyo and his royal court, which was the entire royal family. It was decided their talents would be better suited for defense. Shino had his bugs around the area, and Kiba and Akamaru were smelling for anything suspicious. They were supported by at least 10 Umbu in their task of protecting the royal court. They could see small pieces of battles through the trees. Hinata clenched her fists every time someone she recognized fought. Kiba was annoyed to be left out of the main battle, but understood that it was likely they'd see action anyway. Scores of ninja poured into the thick forest below. Fireballs and rocks flew the length of the valley, falling into the patches of ninja, both sides trusting that their own comrades could avoid the barrage. They saw a huge hand slam down in the midst of the fighting. Chuji's clan was definitely doing massive damage to the IWA ranks. A sudden explosion rocked the valley. Hinata stared with her activated Byakugan at the battlefield. One of the rock nin is exploding the boulders that the others threw into the valley. He's converting them into small sharp shrapnel, she said, her voice taut with tension. One of the ANBU cursed. Shino spoke up. That would be Tatsuo. He's in the Konoha bingo book. A coordinated series of blasts with the telltale sound of exploding tags closely followed. Screams echoed up the valley. The smoke was making even the Byakugan almost useless to see the action below. The royal court, though, seemed to be enjoying the show. They cheered as they heard explosions, and had a storyteller giving them an elaborately embellished rundown of the events as they took place. Hinata was completely disgusted by them. People were dying. Konoha and IWA alike. The third Tsuchikage, Inoki, scowled as he surveyed the battlefield. He was losing many men. This battle was quickly becoming a melee. That was the plan, yes, but he didn't want to sacrifice too many men. He needed them for what came next. He looked left where a small squad of ninja waited. Go, he ordered. They disappeared in an instant. He was proud of his assassination unit. He hoped Danzo would hold up his end of the bargain, but if not, he had a backup plan for that too. One didn't get to beat Tsuchikage without thinking ahead. Danzo signaled his own team of root ninja and they too disappeared in a flash. He fixed his steely gaze on the far ridge where he knew the IWA royal court lay. He fought the urge to glance over at his own royals. The plan had come this far, nothing would stop it now. He knew what was going to happen just as it did. A single scream. An ANBU took an arrow meant for one of the court. A lady of the court shrieking as his blood spurted onto her finery. 5 ninja appeared from nowhere, clubbing the Hyaga heir unconscious. The bug child fought bravely with one, but the ninja he was fighting used an exploding fireball jutsu and sent him flying back down the cliffside. The dog boy did the best, actually killing one of the assassins, tearing out his throat with his bare hands. One of the assassins, though, quickly put 4 kunai into both Kiba and his dog. They lay in the dirt, barely breathing, while the assassins continued to decimate the ANBU station there and the royal court. Danzo had positioned himself far enough away from them that even his attempt to rescue them may seem genuine, but would be futile. He knew the caliber of assassins IWA had. Almost as good as Konoha's. The Konoha assassins were as good as Danzo had promised, Inoki noticed. Within seconds they had taken out the guards he had stationed around the court, and subsequently drugged to slow their reflexes. He knew Danzo would have done the same. Old warriors don't take chances. Inoki knew it was coming, of course. As soon as the last royal was killed, the assassins sped towards him and his personal bodyguard across the ridge. He grinned. He had overestimated Danzo if this was the best plan the old fool had come up with. Danzo watched as the IWA assassins killed the last royal. He and his men were running towards them in an effort to save the royals. He couldn't help his smile as the last one died. Perfect. He stopped his men and made 2 hand signals. A hailstorm of Simban rained down upon the assassins. 2 managed to escape the barrage, disappearing back down the cliff. Out of the bushes came 4 of Danzo's most trusted root ninja. His most powerful. Snake and Scorpion, take the west ridge. Centipede and Gecko, the east. You know what to do. Inoki laughed as the last Konoha assassin was killed. It was time. He fired off a special blue fireball into the sky. There was a thunderous roar and a huge 4-tailed gorilla came into sight. Danzo had actually been expecting this. His spies had told him that Iwagakure had at least one of the tailed beasts. Grimly, Danzo watched as the beast stepped into the valley, wreaking havoc on the Konoha nin. Inoki was being a better puppet than anticipated. He saw a small speck launch itself from the east ridge and land on the gorilla's arm. What followed next was thunderous. The root ninja known as Centipede was a flurry of punches and kicks, each one a thunderclap that echoed in the valley. The fighting warriors below actually stopped and stared as Centipede rapidly destroyed the left arm of the giant gorilla. Each punch seemed to explode, the chakra that made up the monster dissipating and falling away. Anoki stared in disbelief. One lone ninja was destroying his greatest weapon. Danzo smiled. Centipede's chakra poison attack was strong enough and fast enough to disrupt the control of the Jinchuriki. The gorilla swiped at him, but he just jumped and landed on his other arm, running up the shoulder to the head. Again, kicks and fists and destruction. Anoki cursed and wished Han was here. That damn Jinchuriki had gone off on a private mission months ago, and hadn't been seen since. Anoki had to use Rashi even though his control of the Enbi was far from perfect. He was still a formidable weapon though, and the ease with which he was being taken down disturbed the Tsuchikage. He called his reserve ninja, in hiding for this moment. 50 fresh ninja appeared, ready for battle. It's time. Kill the Hokage! The ninja ran into the valley, racing for the southern side, jumping from treetop to treetop. Danzo of course saw them coming, and just waited. Another hailstorm of Saban rained down, this time into the valley. It was a massive sight, millions of needles falling from the sky. He knew Snake and Scorpion were expert poison Saban users, so he had no doubt that no one struck would survive. Guy saw the needles begin to rain down, and shouted to his genin team. Underground. Now! Niji and Ten used the ninjutsu hidden earth technique and vanished in an instant. Lee didn't have that option, but he had been taught another by Guy Sensei. He raised his foot directly over his head and brought it down with all his might. An explosion of earth, and he had made a hole big enough for himself to get into. He dove in and punched the side of the hole, caving it in and holding his breath. He hoped he could hold it long enough for the Saban storm to end. Shikamaru and his team saw the needles coming too. They were exhausted from chakra use though, and couldn't do the hidden earth technique. Shikamaru had them do the next best thing. They dove under the bodies of the IWA ninja they had killed, just as the first needles began to strike the ground. They could feel the dull impact as the needles struck the lifeless body's flesh. Chuji grunted and muttered under his breath. I will not die as a shish kebab. He held on to the two bodies he used as a shield tightly and waited for the Saban storm to be over. Anoki cursed as he saw his assassins fall victim to the Saban storm. A few made it past the first wave, and continued to race towards Danzo. A shadow of movement, and one was dead with a finger strike to his throat. Gecko had joined them on the treetops, balancing precariously but effortlessly on the very tip of a fir tree. He made some fast hand movements then launched at them. In a display of taijutsu that might give Guy a run for his money, he killed the remaining assassins in a matter of seconds. Anoki growled and turned to order his men to retreat. This battle was lost. The Jinchuriki was defeated and his army was at best in a battle of attrition at this point. The plan had worked, the two royal courts were killed, but Anoki's own plan to kill Danzo had been overturned. As he turned to tell his general to order the men back, one of his personal guards, a man he knew from a child and had grown up to be head of the Awagakure police, Tatsui, thrust a kunai into his chest. Anoki spurted blood and fell to his knees as the other guards turned on Tatsui and killed him. Anoki lay in the dust and saw Tatsui's eyes unglaze just before the moment of death, the look of horror on his face as he realized what he'd just done. Anoki died looking at Tatsui's face. Danzo smiled grimly. The Tsuchikage and the Earth Country Royal Court were dead. It was time for the final blow. This one was mental though. He did a fast hand sign and touched his throat. This jutsu would ensure that all the warriors could hear him for miles around. Ninja of Konohagakure and Awagakure. Stop fighting. The Tsuchikage and the royal courts of both fire and earth have been wiped out. This battle is over. I, Danzo, Hokage of Konohagakure, do hereby take control of the land of earth and the village of Awagakure. All rock ninja who will swear allegiance to me will be spared. All others will be killed immediately. I am your conquering lord, the power supreme in our countries. Swear allegiance. Swear it on your honor. On signal, another barrage of poisoned Saban rained down into the valley. Shouts of pain and anguish rose up from the valley. None will be allowed to leave this valley alive unless you have sworn allegiance. Choose. Danzo shouted with finality. Guy and his team dug their way up from the dirt, Lee exhausted and breathless, the others nearly as bad. They had heard the proclamation of Danzo. They had won the war, but what was he doing trying to take over the Earth Country? Shikamaru, Chuji, and Ino stood up and faced the southern ridge where Danzo stood. He's done it, Shikamaru said quietly. I'm afraid so, Asuma agreed. He's molding himself into the feudal warlord of both countries. What does that mean for us? Ino asked. It means we need to keep our secret even better than before, Ino, Shikamaru said gravely, as Rock Ninja surrendered to the will of the new Lord of Fire and Earth. Tengaku, Mabry's wagon burst through the clouds, and landed with a bump continuing to roll. It was followed by several other wagons, coming through the clouds one at a time. They all landed roughly but managed to maintain their balance and loads. Naruto sprung out of Mabry's wagon first, excited to be back home. It dawned on him that he actually considered this place his home. He grinned broadly and stared wide-eyed at the progress his village had made. None of his clones had dissipated in a while. This batch was much stronger than any before. The White Tower was finished. Over 12 stories tall, it stood shimmering in the daylight. A giant quartz stone set in the top, shaped to be a ball with many facets set all over it. It reflected light in all directions, including down onto the white stone walls of the tower, making it seem like it was glowing. Naruto felt a warmth run through him. Senji and Nagi fell in behind him and looked up in awe at the tower. It was indeed a spectacle to behold. Sakura, Hiroka, and their new friend Calamity also walked over from Mabry's wagon. Calamity was dumbstruck. This place was more than she'd ever imagined it could be. One by one the new villagers came out of the wagons. Naruto turned back to them and said loudly, "Welcome home." Chapter 15. The Chambers. Naruto sat perched on a large flat boulder, trying to remain perfectly still. A gentle breeze blew at his hair and slow beads of sweat dripped down his back. The sun beat down on him, not too hot though considering it was noon. Tenchi had explained that it was the time of year, they wouldn't get snow, but it would get cooler. Naruto focused as best he could on nothing like Pa had instructed him. The sage training had begun almost immediately upon his return to Tengaku. Naruto had hardly seen his friends since he came back. Pa and Ma Toad had agreed to train Naruto here in Tengaku, but insisted that he could not have company, or a break from training other than to sleep, until he had achieved a certain level. When he asked what that level would be, Pa had replied very firmly, "I will tell you when you reach it." A brightly colored red macaw landed nearby and let out a screech that he ignored as best as he could, but he flinched anyway. Pa smacked him on the head with his walking stick. "Again," he commanded Naruto. Naruto scowled and rubbed his head. "How am I supposed to keep perfectly still with all these distractions?" Pa growled at him. "You must learn to ignore minor distractions, Naruto. Now start over." Naruto sighed and closed his eyes, letting the wind run over his body for the 100th time today. Senji watched as old man Tora held his first class. The Warrior Academy was still being built by Naruto clones, so for right now they were under a large white tent, learning about the theories of various martial arts as well as other basic schooling. It was unanimously agreed that the school day would be divided into 2 sections, normal schooling including reading and mathematics, and warrior training. Senji was watching Tora instruct the sleepy class in mathematics currently, and he himself felt like he could doze off at any second. He understood the need for it, but it was god-awfully boring. He glanced over at the children. There were 3 tents, with a general age grouping under each tent, give or take a few years. Tora was teaching the older generation of children, the young teens and older teens. Mabry was talking to the group below that, ages 7 to 10. Of all people, Guerrero was the one who had volunteered for the kindergarten children, ages 4 to 7. Guerrero was splitting his time between teaching in the mornings and his masonry work after lunch. So far it was working, and everyone could tell he had a real soft spot for his class. They loved him as well. Senji was there because it was coming up on the class switch, and he was told by Tenchi to come assist him with the first class. Tenchi strolled up to Senji and looked over at the class. He smiled warmly. "Feels like a lot of potential, doesn't it?" Senji shrugged but smiled. "We'll see, I guess. You going to do the chambers training my sensei put us through?" Tenchi nodded. "The first few, not all 35. It will give them a strong base without specializing them in one martial art. After that we can do specialist courses for those who want to choose." Senji grinned. These young warriors in training were in for a real treat. Well, they wouldn't think so right now, but maybe when they look back at it, he thought to himself. Senji could just about make out the 3 orphans Naruto had saved from the half-demon Jihun. They were off to the side of the class, Miran and Genesik looking very calm in their white training clothes. Siren seemed fidgety, itching to get out of the oppressively boring classroom. Next to them were the Kazimo twins Junya and Fuki, paying rapt attention to their grandfather. Okay class. That's it for our lesson today, Tora concluded, to an almost imperceptible sigh of relief from the teenagers. They raced out of the room into the sunlight of the training grounds. Tenchi led them all outside to an area he had clearly set up beforehand, where there was a large ditch filled with water and floating logs not having been there the day before. Various obstacles and areas were set up all over the field. Senjai could not suppress his grin. This was going to be fun to watch. The older generation, or the first class, as Naruto referred to them, would be doing the training with Tenchi and Senjai. The second class was off doing physical fitness with Shizen and one of the new citizens of Tengaku, an instructor named Yuan. The third class was too young for anything other than nap time or going back home to their parents, or the orphanage, so they were welcome to watch the training exercises that they themselves would be doing in a few years. The first class lined up in front the man-made moat and stared across at Tenchi. Balance. Tenchi spoke to them in a commanding, ringing voice. The first thing any and all warriors must have. It doesn't matter if you're a ninja, a samurai, a grappler, or a kung fu master. All the basic principles are the same. If you look here, the sign says first chamber. There are 7 basic chambers that you will need to complete in order to move on to your fighting style of choice. Some of you may want to continue down the path of the chambers. I will guide those that wish to go down that path. There are currently many different fighting styles that you can choose to learn in Tengaku, and we hope to add even more as the village builds. The art of the ninja, the way of the samurai, the dance of capoeira, the high-flying lucha libre. Any of these plus any style you wish to learn can be taught to you. But first, he pointed forcefully to the water and the logs floating on it. First you must cross without getting wet. Any students with special abilities are not allowed to use it. That means you Siren, and you Kristen. Senjai glanced at the 2 children in question. Siren he knew could turn into water and emerge on the other side perfectly easily. He did not know about the Kristen girl, but he'd ask Tenchi later. Begin! Tenchi shouted. In lines of 2 at a time, the students raced into the water, trying to run on the logs. Almost instantly it became a chaotic scene of splashes and drenched young teenagers. As one fell in, he or she was directed to climb out and go to the back of the line to try again. Senjai laughed, remembering the time he had spent doing this training himself. It had taken him a week to figure out how to cross. Tenchi came over and shared his mirth. Why sensei, what's with the girl Kristen? Tenchi pointed at one 13-year-old girl, who laughed as she climbed out of the water. She can pass through objects. Rock, sand, earth, water, nothing can stop her. She's one of Mabry's kids, Tenchi said matter-of-factly. Senjai whistled softly. The academy sure had some gifted people. When they were trained up, he'd almost feel sorry for anyone that picked Tengaku as an enemy. Almost. Guerrera strolled over to his shop. He had enjoyed spending the morning with the children. He smiled as he saw Hiroka playing with his daughter Gabriella. The young female warrior had taken a strong liking to her, as did Hiroka's other friends. Not a day had gone by that either Sakura, Hiroka, or the wild one that called herself Calamity hadn't been at his shop spending time with his daughter. It did free him up to teach on mornings, and a kind lady from the now teeming with life village would be there soon to watch her while he continued his construction projects. He glanced at his shop. It was finished before he could start on the academy. Naruto and the other founders of the village had insisted he make a decent home for himself and Gabriella before he began any more buildings. He had said he did not mind sleeping in the tower, but he did prefer his own place. No sooner had he said that than Tenchi had mapped out a nice lot close by that gave him a great view and easy access to everything. A few of Naruto's clones had shifted to work on his home and shop. He kept the heavenly theme, white stone walls, arches and pillars. He had to admit it was the most luxurious-looking blacksmith and masonry shop he had ever seen, but this sort of thing would be the norm for Tengaku. Hi Guerrera! Hiroka smiled at him. Is it noon already? She glanced at the sky, the sun in the exact middle. The light from the giant quartz stone that was at the top of the white tower reflected rainbows of light down to her. Not for the first time, a question formed in her mind. Guerrera saw the expression on her face and laughed. How many times is it now? He asked her. She smiled and gave a small laugh. I've lost track, she replied. Okay, well, tell me your guess today, he said as he picked up his cooing daughter and touched his masked forehead to hers. Hiroka cocked her head to the side. Well, Sakura seems to think it's possible you found the stone while quarrying the fields for white stone for the tower. Guerrera laughed. No. I did not find the stone here on this island. Damn it! Hiroka scowled. That eliminates finding it here, buying it from a lost prince, stealing it from a warlord, a gift from the actual heaven, and it not being really there but just an illusion. That's about right, Guerrera agreed. None of those are the true origin of the beacon light. Hiroka stood up and sighed. I wish you'd just tell us, we're all dying to know. Even Jiraiya refused to tell us. Said it was your secret to tell. Guerrera nodded. Someday I will explain how it came to be in my possession. He lifted up a giggling Gabriella, playing with her before the babysitter came. But today is not that day. Hiroka spied Sakura and Calamity over by a fountain that a pair of Naruto clones were finishing. She smiled at the sight of her friends. She hadn't expected to make such good friends in Sakura, and now the new girl Calamity. They just clicked. Calamity was a year older than Hiroka at 19, and Sakura was a few years younger. But the three of them had become inseparable. Calamity had so far resisted changing her outfit, and that was the task at hand for the girls this afternoon. Hi Hiroka. How was Gabby today? Sakura asked brightly. Great. Oh, and you were wrong about the quarry, Hiroka replied. They stood there chatting while the Naruto clones happily laid smooth stones down on the lip of the soon-to-be functioning fountain. So girls, what are we doing today? Calamity asked. Her father was still preparing his restaurant for opening day, but he had run her out of the shop to go spend time with her friends. Today, you officially join our squad, Kala, Hiroka said flatly. She had taken to shortening her friends' names just to poke at them. Girls, I said I would already. But after my dad's place opens I need to help him run it, Calamity replied. This was the 10th time they were having this discussion. Yes, Sakura interjected. But most ninja in my village had day jobs as well. There isn't always a mission to go on. And you just have to join us. We're a team. Calamity laughed but Hiroka nodded. Yes, have you looked at how Senji's team is constructed? Sakura whispered under her breath, Naruto's team. Hiroka continued uninterrupted. The boys perfectly balance each other out. Nagi is a short-range specialist. He uses his fists and feet in close-range combat. My Senji is a medium-range expert. His swordsmanship covers that. Naruto is an all-around fighter, but can pull off massive long-range attacks from what we've heard. Together their teamwork is perfect. Calamity cocked her head and looked thoughtful. That's all true. They do work well together. It helps that they're all best friends. Sakura nodded. Like us. I'm a close-range fighter. Hiroka's style is mid-range. So your archery skills would balance us perfectly with your long-range attacks. Calamity sighed and they started walking down the street. My dad agrees with you. I was going to tell you, he says he would be proud of me protecting our new home. He thinks Naruto is the greatest person who ever lived to be able to build this place, and to invite us to move here. He says I can help out at the restaurant, but he can manage if I need to leave. Yay! Hiroka exclaimed and hugged Calamity. Now, just one last thing. She looked Calamity up and down. She wore rough working long-legged pants, and a boy's shirt with the sleeves rolled up. A short kerchief tied around her neck. This look will not do for our team, Hiroka said scornfully. Sakura nodded in a serious manner. What's wrong with my clothes, damn it? Calamity asked. The villagers may be calling the boys' team Daitenchi, but I'd rather we, the first girls' team, were known not only as warrior angels, but as heavenly beauties as well. She smiled with stars in her eyes. You, my friend Kala, need a makeover. With that, Sakura and Hiroka each grabbed an arm of the mildly protesting Calamity, and continued their walk into the hustle and bustle of the still-building village. As they walked through the main street, Sakura noticed that the stores were all taking on similar styles and qualities of Guerrera's house and shop. The Naruto clones that were everywhere in the village were perfecting the masonry work needed to make strong, sturdy structures that matched the heavenly theme. Inari walked by with a few pipes under his arm and smiled at them. Sakura knew he wanted to join the academy, but admired his resolve to finish the job first. She looked up at the sky as they neared the first shop. The hot midday sun was disappearing behind some dark clouds. It looked like it might rain a little bit later. That night, thunderous rain and lightning pelted the village of Tengaku. Lightning struck the white tower repeatedly, but all the bolts seemed to go straight to the beacon light, which just glowed brighter. Some citizens of the village didn't have proper homes built yet, so were going to stay in their wagons, but Naruto had invited them all into the tower for the night. He reasoned there was room for all, and he wanted everyone to think of each other as family. It worked wonders on the people. The first 2 floors were full of families, laughing and talking to each other. Even those who could sleep in their houses chose to stay with everyone else in the tower. Nagi, on a dare from Senjai, stood on a barrel and started to sing a song he had picked up in his travels. Several citizens laughed and joined in, the song a fairly well-known one in certain regions. Nagi danced a small jig as he sang. "'Twas down by the glenside, I met an old woman, a plucking young nettles, nor thought I was coming. I listened a while to the song she was humming, glory oh, to the bold Tengaku men." The crowd roared in approval as Nagi modified the song to refer to their village. He launched into the second verse and many voices rose to accompany him. Naruto cried tears of laughter, clapping along to the song. Outside the thunder raged and rain pounded against the walls to the oblivion of the citizens. A few guys looked at each other and ran out the doors into the rain, only to return before Nagi could finish the verse with their instruments. They queued up and played alongside him. Sakura, Hiroka and a newly dressed Calamity held hands and danced around the barrel that Nagi was on. This was of course a sign for all who wanted to join in and dance as well. The trio of Spirit Wolf clan members who were there were the first to show off their dancing, as well as laughing uproariously and singing along even louder than Nagi was. Tsunade downed another cup of sake. A fine wines establishment was opening, and its owner had brought a few bottles to this impromptu get-together. She heard something hit the building then, but ignored it, thinking it was another lightning strike. She laughed seeing Nagi almost topple off the barrel, his dancing getting a little out of hand considering his foothold, the odd sound forgotten for now. When the first rays of morning light hit the tower, the light hit the beacon and filtered down into the building. Carefully placed seals and crystals reflected and enhanced the light, flooding the interior. Naruto stretched and yawned. The party had lasted until early morning, and he had only gone to bed to the insistence of Pa Toad, who said the training today would not be any easier if he didn't sleep. He looked out the window and sighed. Went to the bathroom, showered, changed, and leapt out the window onto the street. He landed gracefully and stood up straight, bending backwards to stretch his back, his hands on his hips. Looking up and slightly back, he saw something against the side of the white tower. "What on earth?" he exclaimed and turned around. A huge billowing cloth with a multitude of ropes dangling from it was stuck against the tower. From a few of the ropes hung what Naruto knew was a bicycle, but this one had a giant fin behind it, and an oddly thin man in a dripping wet black suit waving down at him. "I say, hello down there. Sorry to be a bother, but I've been up here a rather long time," the man shouted down at Naruto. Naruto stared up at him incredulously but was in too much shock to move. "Who are you? How did you get up there?" The man smiled weakly. "My name is Yoshiro Nakamatsu. And my dirigible ran into your tower here last night in the storm. Not that I mind, of course. That storm made my life flash before my eyes. Do you know how many inventions I've done in retrospect? Over 500. That's not a bad lifetime achievement. I pondered this as I faced my death in the storm. But then I saw the light in the sky, and I tried my best to steer towards it. What seems like hours later, I ran into your tower here. I tried calling for help, but the storm was rather loud, and I could have sworn I heard singing for a while." Naruto stared at him slack-jawed for a minute, but then shook himself awake and walked up the tower wall, applying chakra to his feet to accomplish the task. "Well, that's simply amazing now, isn't it?" Yoshiro exclaimed at seeing a boy walk up a wall. "Hold on a second, Mr. Nakamatsu," Naruto said as he approached the man. He unlooped some of the rope from around the man's body and then held onto his hand. Naruto smiled at him warmly. "You ready?" he asked. The man looked relieved to be untied and perplexed at the question. "Ready for what?" Naruto lifted the man out of the bicycle and held on tight, jumping off the wall. The man held on to Naruto tightly as they plummeted to the ground. Naruto used his one free hand to push some wind chakra to slow their descent a bit, but they still landed fairly unceremoniously. Yoshiro extricated himself from Naruto and brushed off his coat. Naruto noticed he was wearing a black suit with a red bow tie. A tool belt was strapped around his waist with all manner of tiny contraptions that Naruto had never seen before. I really should have brought my descent device. It would have made coming down from there much simpler. But my Kongming cycle didn't have room now, did it? No, Yoshi, it did not. The man seemed to carry on a conversation with himself. Naruto looked a little taken aback at this. He'd never met someone who seemed as off as this man appeared to be. Naruto! Senjia walked out of the tower, stretching as he did so. Who's your friend? Yoshiro stood up straighter and cleared his throat. I am the scientist and inventor Yoshiro Nakamatsu, creator of the parabolic warming umbrella, Pion Pion spring shoes, and the karaoke machine. He flourished a beaker and a pen, the beauty of invention, the thrill of success, the magnitude of helping the world with advancements in technology. No one knows these things more than I do. Senjia and Naruto both stared at the man, jaws open. Nagi and the girls' team had also woken up and witnessed Yoshiro's introduction. Welcome to Tengaku, Mr. Nakamatsu, Tenchi said, walking out of the tower. He too had witnessed the introduction. Pardon me, but we're all a bit surprised at your sudden appearance. Well, yes, I can understand that, Yoshiro said. It was most fortunate for me, though, finding this village. Tengaku, you say? Heaven? Perhaps Yoshi did not survive the night? Jiraiya approached. The villagers had begun to leave the tower to head back to their homes and businesses still under construction. They eyed Yoshiro curiously as they passed by. Mabry looked at Yoshiro and grinned. I remember you. You were run out of a village I was passing through because your house kept exploding. They said your experiments were a nuisance to their society. Yoshiro sighed. Sadly, I cannot tell you which village that was. It has been too many times to count. Naruto grinned and slapped Yoshiro on the back. Well, Tenchi had it right. Welcome to Tengaku, Mr. Nakamatsu. We hope you'll like it here. Tsunade groaned and rubbed her head. Too much sake last night, she thought. With a stretch, she was off her bed and looking out the window. The hospital site was the first thing she saw. Some Naruto clones had already begun work on it this morning. She frowned at the sight. Not because the building was unsatisfactory, but because she had no one to staff it. True that the village was still fairly small. Only a couple hundred people. But it would grow, and they'd need doctors and nurses. Soon. She hoped she could convince some of the new villagers to join her, but for now all the children seemed more interested in emulating Naruto and being a fighter. Tsunade sighed and walked out into the main hall, hoping that today she could scrounge up some new apprentices or nursing students. Ali stared at the building that Naruto had given him for the Spirit Wolf Guild house. It was just that. A house. A 5-story house with space for meetings and a kitchen on the first floor, and 4 floors of bedroom space. He could easily fit his entire clan into this one building. Of course it wasn't finished. The Naruto clones were busy putting up brick walls and slathering concrete on it. But the main structure was there, and the first floor was completed. Ali was astounded. What also astounded him was that the huge man in the mask had carved a stone circular tablet 4 feet in diameter to be placed over the entranceway to their guild. That stone was in the shape of a wolf's head and had the symbols for their clan around it. Boss, it's something else, isn't it? One of his subordinates said in wonderment. They had been in Tengaku less than 3 weeks and the novelty of the place just never seemed to wear off. Yeah, boss, look at that symbol. It will be with much pride that our brotherhood calls this place home. We've never had a home, the other thief said. No, Ali said softly. No, we haven't. Naruto has kept his word and our honor is now bound to this place. However, he said as he peeled off his shirt and flexed his sinewy muscles. I will forever be damned by Kali herself if I let someone else finish my brotherhood's first real home. Ali walked over and picked up a pallet of bricks and moved to help the Naruto clones finish the wall they were working on. The 2 other men followed their leader into the building happily, ready to work hard. Jiraiya sat down under a large umbrella overlooking the training field where the students were for the 2nd day in a row, trying to cross a log-filled pond. Next to him sat their new guest, Yoshiro, or Yoshi as he referred to himself. They had been talking long about Yoshi's past and what his plans were for the future. He had asked officially to stay in Tengaku as a citizen. It wasn't like he had anywhere else in particular to go back to. Naruto hadn't even stopped on his way to training but shrugged and smiled. He had said, of course. I thought that was understood from the moment I took you down from the bicycle. Yoshi was fascinated by the concept of the island and held a piece of the solid cloud in his grasp. You know, it occurs to me that this place, while impossible to find, once found is impossible to defend. I mean, everything is wide open. How do you get up here? Yoshi asked. There's a wind stream that picks up objects in some mountains far below and shoots us up. We land over there in that solid cloud bank and walk over to the island. Jiraiya responded. Yoshi looked over towards where Jiraiya pointed and shook his head. Now that just won't do. What if someone sends a bomb up the wind stream? Or the army of a warlord? They'd be in your home before you knew what was happening. Jiraiya shrugged. I put in some seals where the wind tunnel can be accessed, but it's not foolproof. Yoshi pulled out a pad and a pen. I need some measurements. Yes, Yoshi, I know, it's fascinating. Now be quiet while Yoshi thinks. Perhaps an obstacle that will allow the wind but not objects. Jiraiya squirmed uncomfortably as the scientist spoke to himself. Guess he must be alone a lot. No one but yourself for company. What are you thinking, Yoshi? Jiraiya asked after seeing Yoshi write down a bunch of incomprehensible numbers. Why, I'm thinking a gate of sorts. A sturdy gate that would only let certain people enter. But I need measurements, cloud samples. Data. More data. More. Yoshi said with a mad smile and rushed off to do his research. Jiraiya shook his head. The man was mad as a hatter, but he had to admit, the self-fanning umbrella he was sitting under, another Yoshi invention, may just make the man bearable to be around. He sighed and watched as yet another young student ended up dunked in the pond. Ji-hoon stared at the ground before him. Kyubi had been here. He looked out over the broken port city of Karachi. At the split houses, the cluttered streets, the hundreds of vultures that circled and infiltrated every inch of this city filled with the rotting corpses of the dead pirates who attacked the city. Ji-hoon absolutely loved this place. He cackled madly and drifted lazily through the town. He chanted a spell and threw some black dust into the air. The dust seemed to multiply and spread all over town. One by one the pirate corpses shifted, then rose and walked towards the center of town where Ji-hoon was waiting. The undead were always fun to play with. As hundreds of undead pirates lined up around him, Ji-hoon looked grim. Time for some serious business. I need to know where Kyubi is. He chanted a spell and signaled for one of the ships in the bay that had been sunken by Kyubi's power. The ship rose out of the waters and floated closer towards shore. Feel his energy. The energy that killed you. Find it. Find him. He commanded, and the undead pirates walked towards their ship to set out into the world. Jiraiya called out from the doorsteps of the tower. Sakura! Hiroka! Calamity! His voice ringing like a bell into the village. The three girls in question raced out of their respective places and rushed towards Jiraiya. They stopped right before him and glared. Do you think you can call for us in a nicer tone next time? Hiroka asked. Jiraiya grinned. You mean you don't want to go on your first team assignment? He smirked at the expressions on their faces. Pack your gear. You're protecting a crown prince and his son of the Crescent Moon Kingdom as he journeys across the unnamed country. Tengaku archangels were specifically asked for. Money is no object. He glared at the girls in a serious manner. You are now representing this village and our reputation is all that we have. We need to build a strong one, so I want you to do well on this mission. Is that understood? The girls nodded in unison. Yes, Ero-senin. Jiraiya flinched at that, but didn't bother saying anything. After all, more than half the village called him that now, simply because Naruto did. Sakura looked troubled though and had to ask a question. Why us? Jiraiya smiled and replied. You mean why you girls and not Naruto and his squad? Well, several reasons. He raised his hand and started counting off the fingers. 1. You girls need experience too. We can't focus all our strength on 3 warriors. We need everyone to be strong. 2. Your team is newly formed and you need to cement your teamwork and find your groove, so to speak. 3. As you know, Naruto is undergoing sage training. He's in a dangerous place to interrupt that right now. So he has to complete it before he can leave Tengaku again. He should be tied up for a couple months at the very least. Does that satisfy your curiosity? Jiraiya finished with a smile. I also think it would be good for you to have a more experienced sensei with you, so I've asked Kakashi to supervise your team for this mission. Sakura and Calamity both smiled at that, but for different reasons. Hiroka looked incensed. But Senjis and Naruto set out without a team supervisor. Why do we need one? Because we're women? Hiroka erupted. Jiraiya shook his head. This mission could be very dangerous, but Kakashi will let you girls handle it. He's more of a guide and will help you with training you might need or want along the way. That, and he's going a bit stir-crazy, always asking me when my next book is coming out and I need him out of here before I kill him. Hiroka nodded then and the three girls sped off to pack for their journey. Chapter 16, Prince, Coastal City of Bayshore, Unnamed Country. Sakura looked at the coastal city before them, squinting against the glare of the midday sun. A cool sea breeze whipped at her short pink hair. She looked back at her teammates as they closed the gap behind her. Calamity had her large bow strapped across her back. Hiroka had her scarf billowing out behind her as if it had a life of its own. All three girls wore their white outfits, each with their own color trimmings, Sakura pink, Hiroka red, and Calamity purple. Kakashi, though, had opted to not change his clothes into the now standard white Tengaki uniform. As far as Kakashi was concerned, he was still a Konoha nin just visiting some friends. They all paused and watched as the biggest ship they'd ever seen docked into the seaport of the idyllic village. It had taken them the better part of a week traveling south from Tengaku to meet the ship. "Okay, girls," Kakashi said, going over the mission details for the 100th time. Preparation was key on all missions, he kept drilling into their heads. The Crown Prince has decided to circle the globe with his caravan. So they have sailed east from Land of the Moon over the vast ocean to this port city. From here they intend to form a caravan that will take them across the entire world. We are only responsible for the first part of their journey. We must get them safely from this port city, to the border with the Wind Country. Their ninja will take over from there. Any questions? Hiroka replied petulantly. Nothing has changed since the last 45 times you've gone over this. We get it. We babysit the prince. Tayana. Biaito, Anjingidian. I hope he's handsome, Sakura said dreamily, ignoring Hiroka's strange language that she always resorted to when upset. Her fixation on Sasuke notwithstanding, a girl was allowed to fantasize about a prince if she wanted to. Calamity shrugged. I doubt it. I don't go in for those fairy tale stories about a handsome prince sweeping the girl off her feet. Just doesn't seem realistic when you spend your life in the Badlands. They continued their walk into the city, looking forward to meeting their first assignment, wondering what type of man the prince was. The prince was a fat man. Sakura looked in awe at the girth of the young man before her. He had to be in his 20s still, even if late 20s. He seemed pleasant enough upon seeing the three girls before him. He even tried to kiss Hiroka's hand, to which she attempted to punch him straight to his border destination. Fortunately, Kakashi was quicker than her punch and managed to hold her back. The caravans were being loaded from the ship, and it was taking some time, so Calamity was standing by the sea's edge a little distance away from her friends. She managed to pick out the slightest whistle in the air behind her, so she sidestepped to the right and snatched the arrow aimed for her head out of the air. She pivoted and notched the arrow she had caught to her own mini crossbow and fired back instinctively. It was only as the arrow had already been fired that she realized. It was a toy arrow. The boy who had fired at her got hit smack in the middle of his head, sending him toppling backwards onto the ground with a thud. Calamity rushed over to help the boy. Her mini crossbows were tuned to deliver a massive amount of force behind each arrow. Even a toy one. The boy groaned as the suction-cupped artillery stuck to his forehead quivered. Calamity lifted him to his feet and yanked the arrow off his head. He had to be less than 10 years old. His eyes were glazed over, the shock of the impact still had him dazed. Hey, are you okay, kid? Calamity asked him. Why, yes, the boy answered. I'm okay. He shook his head to clear it. Calamity nodded. Good. She slapped him behind his head, sending him into the dust again. What the hell do you think you're doing firing an arrow at me? What if I'd used a real one to defend myself? You'd be dead now, you idiot. What are you doing to my son? The fat prince ran as fast as he could towards them, with his entourage in tow. Kakashi got there first though and picked the boy up and dusted him off. He's unharmed, Kakashi pronounced. Who do you think you are? Attacking my son? The prince exclaimed. He shot an arrow at me, Calamity replied. He's lucky he wasn't seriously hurt. Kakashi nodded. It is unwise to sneak attack a warrior. The prince scoffed and walked with his son away from them, back to the caravans. The boy looked back in something akin to wonder at calamity. Oh, this is going to be a long journey, Kakashi muttered to himself. Tengaku. In the newly dubbed Mad Scientist wing of the White Tower, an explosion rocked the very tower itself. Guerrera frowned at first. That Yoshi keeps trying to destroy my tower. But then his frown changed to a smug grin. He's not so much as succeeding in putting a dent in it. That's my baby. Good girl. Billowing green smoke emitted from the window of the lab Yoshi was working out of. The inventor's voice echoed in the morning air, Eureka! A clamoring of footsteps, and a few seconds later Yoshi burst through the doors of the White Tower, looking around madly for either Jiraiya or Tsunade. He found Jiraiya on his way back into the tower from checking on Naruto's training with the toads. Yoshi ran up to him, holding an oddly colored short pole in his hands. I've done it! He exclaimed to the Sannin. What have you done, Yoshi? Jiraiya asked, watching curiously as green smoke still continued to billow out of the scientist's temporary lab. Remember the problem we were talking about a few weeks ago? Yoshi asked excitedly. You mean the same problem you talked to me, Tsunade, Tenchi, Guerrera, anyone who will listen, and even yourself more often than not, almost 3 times a day about? Jiraiya replied. Yoshi looked back up from the pole he was holding in his hands, not having listened to Jiraiya's response. Yes, that problem. I've figured it out. The way to keep attackers at bay. There was a moment's silence, a few heartbeats, as Jiraiya waited. And waited. Exasperated, he prodded the scientist. Well, what is it? This. Yoshi responded, holding the pole forward to show Jiraiya, who looked at it with confusion. A rod? Jiraiya responded. Yes. Yoshi affirmed. What is a rod going to do against our enemies? Jiraiya asked, one of his Yoshi headaches beginning to settle in. Glad you asked? Yoshi said happily. He pulled the rod back to his left, holding it like a bat. Hold still. Before Jiraiya could blink, the scientist swung the rod at the Sannin. Now Jiraiya wasn't world-renowned just for his gift for writing. He was first and foremost a mighty ninja. He could have easily dodged the rod. But he sensed no malice in Yoshi's attack, so he gritted his teeth and waited for the sting of the impact, but none came. The rod passed right through his body, becoming nothing more than some form of gas and hardening back into a solid rod as it left his body. Yoshi stood there smugly and grinned, all his teeth showing. How did you do that? What is that? Jiraiya asked. This, Yoshi explained, holding the rod across both hands. This is Heavenstone. It's made by a special calcification process using the amazing cumulus nimbus that we are perched upon precariously. Tenchi, who had walked over, scratched his chin. So you found a way to harden the special clouds? Well, in layman's terms, I suppose yes, I did. But it's so much more than that. See, I discovered that every second we stay here on this island, tiny particles of the clouds seamlessly integrate into our very being. We are in essence becoming part of this place. Yoshi said. Fascinating, Tenchi responded. Is it damaging us? Oh no, it seems to have no effect whatsoever on us. It's harmless. But Heavenstone, which is what I, Yoshi, have decided to call my creation, is also made up of the cloud. This substance is unbreakable, unmoldable, unstoppable, except to the cloud. It won't touch anything that's been in contact with the cloud for a sufficient period of time. So, Jiraiya said, thinking, you think we can use this Heavenstone to build a barricade in the windstream? Yes. Yoshi nodded. I theorize that if I can pump enough energy into the rods, an electromagnetic field can be generated between rods of Heavenstone, thus rendering the border impassable to any object not already a resident of Tengaku. Yoshi beamed at them. But what about supplies, new people? Jiraiya asked. Yoshi looked perplexed. Oh, new people? I suppose they could sit outside the fence for a few days to get enough cloud in their pores? Guerrera walked over. You had suggested a gate before, didn't you, Yoshi? He looked carefully at the rod in Yoshi's gloved hand. It seemed to change color depending on the angle you looked at it. Yes. A gate would work magnificently. But it can't be shaped or cut. We'd need to have a mold for me to create the material in. And Yoshi closed his eyes and began mumbling to himself. And 50 poles can be embedded around this island as the wall, once I figure out the power supply issue. Great job, Yoshi, Tenchi said, slapping the scientist on his back. Will we have to deal with much more of that green smoke though when you're making it? Yoshi looked up at the tower as the billowing green smoke continued to pour out the window. Oh no, that's just my tea. Would anyone like some? They all walked away. Middle of nowhere, Hiroka walked alongside the caravan, watching as the wheels turned around and around. God, I wish we'd see some action, soon, she muttered to herself. Kakashi was 2 steps behind her, and replied in a soft tone. We will, you know. Hiroka smiled a little at that. I know. We're in the Badlands. What is this fat prince thinking passing though here with this rich caravan? Kakashi shrugged. The land of the moon is a very wealthy place. There are many cities just on the inside of the Wind Country's borders that are considered luxury shopping centers. By coming this way around the world, he's saved many months of travel. Hiroka sighed. Laziness? He's endangering his son and this entire company of people out of laziness? Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows how royalty thinks? All we need to be concerned about are the 2 scouts watching us from the forest edge to our right, and be prepared for when they attack. Hiroka nodded, whistling up ahead at Sakura and Calamity. A harmless enough whistle that neither seemed to react to. But Sakura managed to walk directly to the side of the wagon with the prince and his son, and Calamity climbed on top, seemingly to stretch. You girls know what you're going to do? Kakashi asked. He would normally have formed a plan for them to follow, but the girls had told him they already had some worked out between them. Since he was there just to advise when needed, he let them handle it. He knew he could step in at any time. He lifted his Hittite off his Sharingan eye and slowly looked over the forest to their left and right. 50 or so, he said softly to Hiroka. Can you manage? She scoffed. Manage? I was hoping to get a real workout. This won't even break a sweat. Kakashi smiled, lowering back the headband. It's a long way to Wind Country, so pace yourself. A brace of arrows flew out of the forest and arced up, then down, racing for the caravan. Hiroka! Calamity exclaimed. Hiroka twirled once, unraveling her scarf and pushed her chi and thought into the red material. It billowed out and shot towards the arrows. She flicked her wrists, steadying her legs into the ground in a horse position, then leaping into the air. She seemed to fly, the cloth moving this way and that, trapping the arrows in its material. She twisted and turned, her feet moving as though she were running on the air itself, landing on top of a wagon directly behind the one Calamity was on. Kakashi says 50? Calamity grinned at her friend's talent and palmed her big bow. She had already laid down a quiver with arrows and began pulling them out 2 at a time. She worked the bow like a machine. Arrows, string, fire. Arrows, string, fire. Her sharp eyes picking out shadows and movement amongst the trees of the forest. In a matter of seconds she fired 20 arrows into the woods before the first 2 had even hit their target. Screams of pain told them that at least some had hit. How many, Calam? Sakura shouted up at her. 10 at best. Sorry, too many trees. Calamity replied, lowering her big bow and pulled out her mini crossbows. Sakura stood there, feet apart, waiting for the rush from the attackers. It came seconds later. 3 large hyenas with riders lurched out of the forest. Each hyena was easily 3 times bigger than Sakura, but she stood her ground as the gnashing teeth and claws raced for her. Sakura? Calamity asked without asking. Sakura shook her head. Time to show her friends why she belonged in this team. As the first hyena got close enough to try to bite her, she sidestepped and cocked back her fist. Fury no Kiwami! She let slip out loud. Tsunade had told her not to shout her technique for the world to hear. After all, they were ninja. But these enemies weren't going to live to tell the name of her technique. The hyena whose head she punched exploded into blood spray and bone fragments, collapsing in front of the other 2. Its rider trapped beneath the massive body. Sakura's hand sprung over the body and rushed the second hyena. Its jaws snapped at her face. Her momentum as she ducked backwards while running forward kept her sliding under its stomach. She quickly used a kunai to slice its body open from neck to crotch. It shrieked and fell, thrashing madly, breaking the body of the attacker riding on top of it. The third rider swung a sword that Sakura narrowly managed to avoid. Calamity was about to pick him off as he came around to attack Sakura again, but Hiroka appeared next to her and stopped her. Don't do it. She's proving a point. They watched as Sakura spun around and threw her kunai into the chest of the man. The hyena still came at her though. To who? Us? Calamity asked as Sakura jumped up and came down with her fist into the hyena's head. Us and herself, I think, Hiroka replied. Still 17 in the forest. The others ran. Kakashi said from the ground. Good teamwork, girls. Way to use your strengths. Sakura inhaled and exhaled sharply, trying to catch her breath. Ha! If only Naruto could see her now. Or Sasuke, can you see me, Sasuke? Can you see that I'm getting strong too? She walked back closer to the still rolling caravan and rejoined her friends. Konoha, your services will be sufficiently compensated, the sleazy obese courtesan said to Danzo. Even for Danzo, this part of the job disgusted him. He didn't mind the task he was being asked to do, he just hated having to deal with people like this. Yes, it will. Tell Shabadaba that the price is 2 million apiece for each head. The prince and his son. Danzo spat out at the perfumed man before him. King Shadababa will be most grateful if you are successful. The man smirked at Danzo. There are some warriors from some new village in the unnamed lands protecting the caravan. The king hired them, so I don't know anything about them. But I'm sure your talented ninjas here can handle a handful of bodyguards. Danzo irritatedly looked at the courtesan's escort. You! He directly addressed the bodyguard to the courtesan. Can you speak? The guard looked at Danzo confused. Yes, my lord. Good. Danzo said, throwing a kunai into the throat of the courtesan. He watched as the man fell to the floor, gagging on his own blood a few seconds before dying. Tell Shadababa my terms, and tell him if he fails to pay, that it will be his blood on my floor. After the guard left, taking the dead body with him, Danzo summoned 2 of his root advisors. Assassination assignment. But I don't want any root outside of Konoha at this time. We are still rebuilding strength and solidifying my position. Pardon me, sir, then why take the job at all? One asked. Because rebuilding Konoha is going to be expensive. And Shadababa has access to more than enough money for our needs. Once he's completed his coup d'etat, we will send a small force to claim that island. I want that treasury for my own. But in the meantime, I need an assassin. Suggest someone and send them out to the unnamed country. We have a map that the caravan will be following. Find them before they come under the protection of Wind. Last thing I need is another war. Not yet anyway. Wind country will face us soon enough. The advisors nodded and left the room. Who are you thinking of? One asked the other. If we hadn't thrown the snake's apprentice into a dungeon a few days ago, I'd say her. But we need an uncomplicated success on this. Send out Asuma along with a small squad of Chunin loyal to Danzo. He was once one of the 13 guardians of the Fire Daimyo, so he can't be happy with the events in the Valley of Death. He has yet to make any obvious moves or objections, though. I think he will do the mission grudgingly, but efficiently. So be it. Tengaku. Ali looked with pride at the guild house. They had completed it side by side with Naruto's clones in an impossibly short space of time. The stone carving that was their clan symbol was firmly in place over the doorway. Red flags also bearing the symbol of the clan stuck out of the walls at a 45-degree upwards angle, making it seem regal. His 2 fellow clan members also stood in awe of their new home. None of them had ever had anything even close to this. Either born into the clan or orphaned and adopted into the clan, their life had always been on the road. Ali turned to his friend on the right. We will have a ceremony. Find our brothers and tell them I want them here within the week. You know where to start looking. Yes, leader. Now where is the boy that caused all this? Ali asked the second man. He was of course referring to the boy who had been orphaned by the clan on their raid of Naruto's caravan. Ali had not seen him for a few days. Azrael is running the chambers with the other students of the academy. Ali nodded, pleased at this. It was stunning to see the training that the children were being put through. It was training he had heard of in a faraway land, but never seen. It would indeed give all the children strong basic martial arts skills, which they could then use to go off in any direction they chose. It would be a perfect base for the Kalaripeata that Azrael would be learning. Has he passed the first chamber as yet? Ali asked. Yes, leader. He and a handful of the others in his class have started the second chamber. After passing the first chamber, which was essentially a perfect balance exercise, the successful students had to immediately begin the second chamber, an arm and shoulder strengthening exercise, carrying buckets of water through a short, narrow wooden maze. The only way through was twisting left and right, while holding the buckets above the wooden blunt spikes that they have to navigate. It was grueling, but would give them the strength needed for upper body attacks and defenses. Ali was very impressed with the training, and had high hopes for Azrael, the first of his clan to endure it. The boy had taken to the clan grudgingly. In the outer lands, the death of your family was the norm, not the exception. The boy understood the difference between the man who killed his mother, Krishna, and the rest of the clan. Ali had already chosen which of his men would stay to teach the boy and run the guild. He looked around at the village around them. The streets were busy with villagers finishing their shops and homes. Naruto had done a miracle and given these people a home. Still the middle of nowhere, Calamity whittled away at the sticks she had handpicked, straightening and forming them into arrow shafts. She'd find feathers tomorrow to notch them with. The sun beat down on her atop the wagon train, but this is what she liked. The traveling, the open air. Her father had moved them around a lot, looking for safer places to live. They had had to restrict their travels to the unnamed country, because of the vast desert that was the Wind Country. Not many could afford the cost of a caravan that could cross that desert. They certainly couldn't. She felt the eyes on her again, the third time that day. Glancing to her left, she saw the prince's son peek at her over the edge of the wagon. "You know, you may as well come and help me, if you have nothing better to do," she said without looking at him. She heard him gasp, then could practically feel the gears in his head turning as he took a minute to think. He sat down next to her. "How are you so good with your arrows?" he asked. Calamity laughed. "Food." The young heir looked confused, so she elaborated. "Where I grew up, a lot of times it was just my dad and I. So I hunted. And if I missed, we didn't eat. Eventually I never missed. There is a part of the Badlands where the vultures will swarm your prey seconds after you kill it. So you need to be able to kill them too. Speed. Accuracy. It's drilled into you by the harsh realities of life. I got good because I needed to." The boy still didn't seem to understand. "Grandfather says one day something important will depend on me not missing." Calamity nodded. "Your grandfather is a smart man. One day your life or someone else's could hang in the balance. And you cannot miss." The boy stood up straight. "I never miss either, watch." He notched his toy arrow to the bow and fired at the back of one of his entourage's head. It stuck and the man exclaimed in annoyance until he saw it was the boy. He smiled and nodded. Calamity laughed. "Good shot. But you're old enough that I think the toy should be retired. Firing real arrows is different. The weight is different, the amount of pressure in the string, the distance they can travel. You need to practice with the real deal." She finished carving the arrow she was working on and held it up. "A real archer makes her own arrows. That way you can be sure of the quality." She took out a small knife and handed it to him, then nodded towards the pile of sticks. "Grab one and let's begin. I'll show you how to carve today, and then tomorrow we practice shooting," she said smiling, taking a liking to how interested the boy was. "What's your name?" he asked her. "Calamity." "What's yours?" she replied. "Hikaru." "Tengaku." It was night time and the field was empty. But that's what Inari wanted. No witnesses. He braced himself then ran full tilt towards the ditch filled with water and logs. He managed to step on the first log and push off again, but then his next footing slipped and he fell back into the water. He spluttered and swam back to the starting side and climbed out, getting ready to try again. He was not officially enrolled in the school. He and his grandfather were still finishing their job. But Inari had every intention of joining the classes when they were done, and he did not want to be left behind. He had been coming out here every night for a week, trying to pass the first chamber. He inhaled and tried again, still not managing to get past the second step. It had taken him a few days to get even the first step, and this one was harder. He knew some of the kids had passed already, but it was just a handful, for at most. He could still catch up if he got this. Tenchi watched from a small distance away, unbeknownst to Inari. "How's he doing?" Tazuna asked from behind Tenchi. "Good," Tenchi replied. "He's figuring it out. He's got the tenacity, that's for sure." Tazuna nodded in the darkness. "We're almost done, and I have to be leaving soon. I know Inari wants to stay. He wants to be close to Naruto." Tenchi smiled. "He's not alone in that. I heard about that bridge in your homeland. The Great Naruto Bridge. I guess he's always had an effect on people." Tazuna looked across as his grandson ended up in the water again. "Yes. He has. Inari is still young though, and his mother would miss him. We've already been gone a year." An owl hooted from a tree nearby. Tenchi spoke quietly so that their voice wouldn't carry to Inari. Why not bring his mother here? Or at least ask her if she'd like to come? I've thought of that. I will suggest it. The choice is hers though. I've already spoke to Jiraiya. I will be back in a month. Someone has to maintain the water mains and power lines if there are any problems. If my daughter chooses to stay in Wave Country, then I will need to be back and forth. If she chooses to come here, then I could just stay. That would make Inari happy, Tenchi said. He held his breath as he saw Inari make his second step and slip on the third. He was thinking of some way he could help with boy figure it out, but that wouldn't be fair. None of the other students were given clues, and he already considered Inari a pupil. Good luck on your journey to Zuna. Inari will be safe with us. You know we have a wind stream that can take you almost to the Great Naruto Bridge itself. Naruto's clones made special note of that one. Tazuna nodded yes, but I'm too old for that form of travel. I'd rather do it the old-fashioned way. Leave the flying to the birds and the young. He snickered and retreated into the night. Konoha, Asuma stopped at the hospital to check on Kurenai. She had been at the bedside of her students for weeks now. Recovery had been slow for Kiba and Shino. The bug user had massive fire burns that it had taken medical teams days to repair. As it was, he was still going to have a large burn scar on his chest. Many in his colony had died too, causing him further distress. His clan had been assisting with taking care of him, tending to his mental distress at such a huge loss. Kiba had lost a lot of blood from the kunai, so had Akamaru. But they would both survive, it just took time. Hinata was unconscious for a few days but had awoken and left with nothing more than a bad headache and the shame of disappointing her father. He had, however, been so glad she was alive that he dismissed that claim to disgrace and smiled at her. The Hyuga were against Danzo, albeit secretly. It was clear the death of the royals was orchestrated and that his daughter was meant to be killed along with them. Hayashi Hyuga was furious but reined in his killing intent, biding his time. Asuma spotted Kurenai in a chair, sleeping. She had never left the side of her students since they were admitted. He smiled and kissed her on her forehead without waking her. He left a rose in her lap and exited quietly. He did not relish an assassination mission. But the sooner it was over with, the sooner he would be back to take care of Kurenai and his team. He leapt through the Konoha gates and headed west. It would take him 2 weeks in a straight line to intercept that caravan, and even then he would be barely a mile or two from the Wind Country border. He had to be swift. Chapter 17 Demon. Senji strolled down the main street, marveling at how the village looked. Just a few short months ago, they had been sitting around a campfire planning what materials they needed. Now they had citizens, and stores and homes and the glistening white tower in the center of the village. He smiled happily. Naruto's dream had come true. He knew off in the small forest behind the tower that Naruto was training with the toads, but Nagi was somewhere in town and Senji needed someone to spar with. A small boy ran across his path laughing as another boy in a mask chased him. Senji smiled, but then a memory came back, startling him. The memory of the demons in the alleyway they had faced months ago came flooding back like a nightmare, and he stopped dead in his tracks. The parting words of that demon Jihun crossed his mind. Senji turned on his heels and went looking for Mabry. Mabry was in the supply warehouse taking inventory, a job he hated. He scowled but did it grudgingly, checking to see what items he needed to order. Senji knocked on the door. Hey Mabry, busy? Mabry just grunted at him. With a smile, Senji walked in. I need to talk to you about something. Remember that demon Jihun? Mabry stopped what he was doing and looked up. Yes. Why? Well, do you also remember his promise to be back? And do you also remember the toothpick you gave me to defend myself with last time? Senji asked. Mabry smiled. Yes, I remember those things. What do you want, Senji? Well, just one thing. It's likely that on another mission we will run into him, or his monster squad again. I will not face them with a butter knife in my hands. I want a real weapon, Senji said resolutely. Mabry nodded. Okay, well then you want either the Kusanagi, which I believe is owned by a fairly horrible ninja called Orochimaru. Heard of him? Ah, yes. Naruto has spoken of him, and I've heard of him before. Good, you won't be getting that one anytime soon. But there are a few swords out there that might suit your purpose. The world is a big place, you know. I think, yes, the best place for you to start is with the names Gonjiang and Moyi, and to talk to our resident den of thieves. Mabry said, going back to his work. Senjai left excitedly to hunt down Ali. Nagi scowled and bit into the piece of straw in between his teeth. He watched the classes going on across the field, seeing the two groups of children. Those who had made it to the second chamber, and they were few, and those still figuring out the balance that was required to pass the first chamber. He glanced across in the other direction and saw Senjai walking over. "Hey Nagi, what you planning to do today?" Senjai asked. Nagi grinned back. "Something fun, I hope." Senjai and Nagi found Ali in his guild house preparing for their ceremony later that week. Most of the clan had arrived, although some were out getting items they needed. The place was looking fantastic, Senjai thought, nudging Nagi to look at the carving that Guerrera had done, and was now over the entrance. "Hey Ali, can I ask you something?" Senjai said, walking closer. Ali looked up, annoyed at the interruption in the planning. He was enjoying himself in something frivolous for the first time in his life, and his men were fully into it too. "Just a minute, Senjai." Ali looked over at one of his men. "Suresh, what about the balloons? Did you get the red ones?" The man frowned. "Leader, no disrespect, but is red really the way we want to go? It would really clash with the green tapestry. I was thinking a golden color." Ali slammed his fist into his desk. "I said red. Every time we rob a noble's house or crash a party, the rich always have red balloons. Are we not deserving of red balloons in this our new home? Do you, Suresh, think the Spirit Wolf clan is not worthy of red balloons?" Senjai and Nagi watched humorously at the exchange. Ali sure was taking this seriously. "Now, what did you guys want?" Ali said, turning his attention back to them as Suresh sulked off indignantly, whispering foreign words to Nagi and Senjai, although Nagi was sure he heard the word prima donna in there somewhere. "Have you ever heard of the names Ganjiang and Moyi?" Senjai asked. Ali's eyes flashed and a grin spread across his face. "The legendary twin swords? Of course I know the story." Nagi looked puzzled. "I've never heard of them." "That's because you are not a weapon user," Ali replied. "Any swordsman worthy of the name knows of the Ganjiang and Moyi swords. Centuries ago, in a time and land long forgotten, a swordsmith couple was asked by their king to forge a pair of swords for him. These smiths were artists in their work. Their names were Ganjiang and Moyi. It is said that they used human energy, qi, to power their blast furnace to melt the steel, but it was insufficient for the swords they desired to make. Moyi sacrificed herself to increase human qi by throwing herself into the furnace. The desired result was achieved after 3 years, and the two swords were named after the couple. Ganjiang kept the Ganjiang sword for himself and presented the Moyi sword to the king. The king was angered when he discovered the truth, and he had Ganjiang killed. Their son Qi was eager to avenge his father, and he sought the Ganjiang sword. At the same time, the king dreamt about a youth wanting to kill him, and he placed a bounty on the youth's head. Qi was indignant, and so filled with anguish that he started crying during his quest for revenge. Qi met an assassin, and he told the assassin his story before committing suicide. The assassin was moved and decided to help Qi fulfill his quest. The assassin brought Qi's severed head and the Ganjiang sword to meet the king, who was overjoyed. The assassin asked the king to have Qi's head boiled, and he told the king that he needed to take a closer look in order for the head to decompose faster. The king heeded the assassin's words, and the assassin seized the opportunity to decapitate the king and throw his head into the boiling water. The assassin then committed suicide by self-beheading, and his head fell into the boiling water too. The heads were burnt until the features were no longer recognizable, and they were buried together. The grave was called Tomb of Three Kings. The swords were buried along with them. Nagi looked wide-eyed at conclusion of Ali's story. "So what's so special about these swords then? Because they're made from qi?" Senjai shook his head. "Not just that. The lives sacrificed for the blades have made them instruments of death themselves. It is said that if the wielder of the swords came upon the creator of the world on his journey, even he would be cut." "Oh." Nagi finally understood. "You want them in case we have to fight that Jihun guy again?" Senjai grinned and looked back at Ali. "So any clues on where the Tomb of Three Kings is?" Ali scowled and pointed down the corridor. "First room on the left is where we're storing all the scrolls that we've accumulated over the years. There are many. I think I did read one that contained an old map of the old lands. It is somewhere to start." He squinted his eyes. "However, don't think I'm helping you just because we live in the same village." Senjai looked at Ali intently. 50%. Ali nodded. Done. And I will send 2 of my clan as well. Senji agreed and walked down the corridor with Nagi close behind. 50% of what? Nagi asked curiously. The king was said to be one of the richest in history. If we find that tomb, there will be a lot of gold. Senji said, opening the door to find a room piled high with scrolls and parchments. Nagi looked at the stack before them and sighed. This is not the fun day I had pictured. Middle of nowhere, Kakashi looked up at the cloudy sky. A thunderous crack and a gust of cold wind blew at his face. Something felt off. He looked back. The convoy was rolling on. It had been an uneventful week of traveling since the bandit raid. According to his estimate, they had another 2 weeks before they hit the border of Wind Country. Hiroka and Sakura flanked either side of the prince's coach. Calamity had taken to spending time with the prince's son, teaching him how to make and shoot real arrows. Kakashi thought her to be a good teacher. The boy had excellent aim. But today, she sat on top the wagon directly behind the prince's coach. This gave her a better vantage point on any attacks on the convoy. Kakashi himself had on a coat with a hood to shield himself from the rain, also to not give away that he was a ninja protecting the caravan. This way he looked like a normal guard, just slightly ahead and to the left of the wagons. The rain started to fall, whipping at them in blinding sheets. Kakashi knew it was coming, because it was when he would have attacked. 3 figures burst from the tree line and raced towards the prince's wagon. Arrows zipped at them, Calamity firing rapid fire at them. Shockingly none hit, the attackers dodging, ducking and weaving and never missing a step towards the caravan. Kakashi instantly recognized that they were ninja from their movements, not just ordinary bandits. This was no robbery, this was an assassination attempt. Asuma swore violently. The 3 Chunin Danzo had assigned to him had been a pain in the ass for the entire trip. Their unswerving loyalty to Danzo had made conversations near impossible. He had kept to himself for the entire trip, sleeping apart when they stopped to rest at night. They had gone ahead without him, wanting the glory of killing the prince for themselves in order to impress Danzo. He had caught up to them just as they left the trees. He saw the wagons, the archer on top, and a female warrior on the side closest to the attack. There was probably one on the far side as well. From the side of his eyes, he saw a figure start to move to intercept the Chunin. He glanced at him through the rain, not making out much, but his senses told him it was a formidable opponent. As much as Asuma hated Danzo, this was a job that Konoha had accepted. He unsheathed his chakra blades and leapt into the rain. Kakashi saw a 4th shadow leap from the forest, this one heading to cut off his own interception of the 3 ninja. He stopped in his tracks and focused on this enemy, having a feeling that this one was the most powerful. He had to trust the girls to handle the 3 ninja. He formed a few quick seals, and used the massive rain sheets to form a water dragon, sending it after the newest attacker. To his credit, the ninja dodged it well, and sliced the dragon's head off with his blades, killing the jutsu. The ninja rushed towards Kakashi, who palmed his kunai and moved to meet the ninja. Hiroka saw that Calamity's arrows were not finding their target, and took her defensive stance. These were ninja, not bandits, so she'd be hard-pressed. She felt a thud in the ground and realized Sakura had landed next to her, having jumped over the wagon. Another thump and Calamity landed on top the wagon, notching more arrows to her bow. "Okay girls, let's kill these guys," Calamity shouted over the rain. A bolt of lightning struck the ground not far, and that was the cue for Sakura and Hiroka to lunge forward. Calamity exhaled and fired 5 arrows off her bow at once, hand working the string in a blur, firing off another 5 a second later. The ninja blocked the first volley, but the second managed to catch one in the thigh as he leapt out of the way. At the closer ranger, the arrows were going impossibly fast, almost too fast to dodge. The ninja who was hit fell to one knee and swore violently. One of the unharmed ninja made a hand sign and sent a fireball racing towards the wagon and Calamity. Hiroka twisted and turned her cloth, catching the fireball in the folds of cloth. She spun and twirled in midair, and using her chakra-enhanced cloth as a slingshot fired the same fireball back towards the ninja, the rain sizzling as it cut a path of steam through the torrent. He made another hand sign and swapped places with a block of wood. The second unharmed ninja came at Sakura with a pair of batons. He turned and twisted, swinging the 2 metal pipes at her head and ribs. She had forward momentum as she was running towards him, so she just slid to her knees and leaned backwards, sliding under his swings. She raised herself to one knee as he came around again ready to swing. She threw a punch, her Fury no Kiwami hitting him a glancing blow, but still enough to make him drop one of the batons and spin around. He went with the spin and hit Sakura across her ribs with his baton. She let out a yell of pain and clutched her side, both of them leaping backwards to get ready for another attack. Calamity swore violently. The one ninja she had hit was back up, having pulled the arrow out of his leg. She saw Hiroka and Sakura engage their enemy, but she had no time to worry about them. She dropped the large bow and pulled out her twin small crossbows. She had built them herself a long time ago, designed to automatically load up to 50 bolts each. It was her favorite weapon for closer range, rapid fire. She aimed at the ninja and fired, the first bolt sailing through the air as the next clicked into place. The ninja swapped out with a wooden log and came rushing back towards the wagons from a slightly different angle. Calamity swiveled in his direction and fired again, another 5 shots each. The ninja ducked under them and kept coming. Calamity looked at the direction he was attacking from and smiled. Fate seemed to be on her side. The wind was blowing from behind her, towards him with a lot of force. A quick glance around and she saw what she was looking for. A small jug of wine the wagon driver seemed to be using frequently. She had seen him drinking from it the day before and stashed it above the canopy. She holstered one of her mini crossbows and loaded the second, lighting the arrowhead and praying the rain didn't douse it before it did its job. She kicked the jug towards the attacking ninja and shot it with the bolt as it got close, shattering the clay receptacle. Its liquid contents splashed out, the wind blowing it towards the attacking ninja, the fire bolt catching the alcohol and turning it into a sheet of fire that in a blink of an eye engulfed the ninja. He screamed as the flaming contents burned his face, and he swiped at it with his hands to douse it. He never got the chance. Calamity fired 5 more crossbow bolts into his chest while he was distracted, silencing his screams. She turned to see how her friends were doing, hearing the screams of battle over the pounding rain. Hiroka swirled in midair, barely dodging a brace of shuriken. Her opponent was very skilled in the use of fire jutsu and shuriken throwing, and he had a nasty habit of combining the two in attacks. Her special scarf was resistant to flame attacks, but even so, it was starting to smell a bit singed. The rain also made it harder for her to manipulate it as it was becoming waterlogged. She landed in the mud, almost losing her footing. The ninja smirked and sent another fireball at her, quickly also sending 3 shuriken flying behind the fireball as a secondary attack. Hiroka was having quite enough of this. She planted her feet down firm and remembered a lesson her father had taught her when she was very little. One of the most basic tactics anyone ever learned. The strongest defense is a good offense. She twirled the cloth into a tight spin and funneled it to catch the fireball in a wide net. The ninja did not see when she let go the cloth and dove under the fireball and shuriken and got within 2 feet of him. He barely had time to register as she stood in a stance and began going through a series of finger punches and palm thrusts against his chest. He did feel it though when his heart exploded in his chest. As he fell to the ground, a panting Hiroka noticed for the first time the headband this ninja was wearing. Uttering a sharp curse, she glanced towards Sakura. The baton wielder swung for Sakura's head with enough force to separate it from her shoulders. She ducked instead of blocking. She had made the mistake of blocking one of his attacks, and had what she was sure was a broken left forearm to show for it. She kept her distance though, watching for an opening. They both had one useless arm now, and the fight was getting desperate. The ninja lunged forward, using the baton like a spear. Sakura ducked and tried a punch. He twirled the baton around his forearm and pushed her punch down with the tip. She stepped in, trying to swipe at his feet with her front leg. He raised the leg and kicked out, trying to break her knee. She bent to the left, avoiding the kick, and coming around with her back foot in a tornado kick to his midsection that connected solidly. He stumbled backwards and that was all the opening Sakura needed. She rushed forward. He swung the baton at her midsection, aiming for the damaged ribs. She sacrificed her broken left forearm again and felt the sharp mind-numbing pain as he hit her already broken bones, but it was not enough to stop her. Her fist aimed directly at his face. Her eyes finally registered the symbol on his forehead protector. A leaf. Konoha. It was too late though, and her fist connected with all the force she could muster. His head exploded in shards of bone and brain matter, his body freezing for a second and collapsing in the mud. A leaf. Konoha. Sakura cried out, falling to her knees, Hiroka and Calamity rushing to her side. Kakashi locked blades with the ninja for the barest of seconds before recognizing the weapons in the man's hands, and immediately did a kawarimi with a log. Asuma's chakra blades cut right though the kunai Kakashi was wielding a split second earlier, as if it was butter. "Asuma!" Kakashi shouted, throwing off his raincoat. He stood a short distance away and watched as the Konoha nin turned around and lowered his blades. "Kakashi?" he said incredulously. "What the hell are you doing here?" Tengaku, Naruto stretched as he exited the tower. He'd been sitting as still as possible for the past few weeks, and the toads said he had made enough progress that he could take a break. He could feel the natural energy enough to not let it turn him into a frog and his body into stone. That was a prospect he was not interested in. So Naruto had to decide what to do on his day off. He looked around, and the place seemed busy. The streets were bustling with people and a few of his clones here and there. Shops were open, people were walking and laughing, children were playing in the streets. He heard strong laughter coming from a noodle stand as members of their resident guild of thieves talked about their ceremony later that night. Naruto grinned. Everyone seemed really happy. He walked down by the schoolyard and saw Guerrera teaching a class. He waved and saw the man smile. Naruto wondered what his face looked like under that mask. He glanced over at the training field and saw that a few students were still trying to cross the first chamber. Naruto walked over upon seeing a familiar face in the last few. "Hey Inari," Naruto called out. "What you doing?" "He's joining the class, Naruto. Do not disturb him. He needs to realize he's overthinking his steps and just let it flow," Tenchi said from Naruto's left. "He enrolled a few days ago." Naruto saw Inari make 2 successful steps on the logs, then slip and fall in. He frowned thoughtfully, wondering how he could help. Inari climbed out soaking wet and joined the back of the line. Naruto smiled. He knew how he could help. "Hey Inari. Aren't you from Wave Country? Don't they have water where you're from?" "You look silly," Naruto said, laughing. Tenchi scowled and moved to say something but was cut off. "Oh yeah. Baka. I'll show you." Inari shouted back and took to the water like a jet, anger fueling his legs as he ran from log to log and landed safely on the other side. He stood there a moment, shocked at his success, realizing what he was doing wrong. Naruto laughed. "Good job, little brother. Now get going to the second chamber," he said with a big grin and a thumbs up. Inari laughed and walked over to the second chamber to the cheers of his new classmates. Naruto nodded at a smiling Tenchi and headed down to where he knew Yoshi was installing the new gates. He had insisted no one else could help him, not even Naruto's clones. A wrong touch would spoil the Heavenstone material until it set in place. On his way he spotted the Spirit Wolf Guild, decked out elaborately in ribbons, flags and lights. All in preparation for tonight. He could smell the feast that was being cooked, and yearned to go inside to sneak a bite. But he wasn't sure he could steal from a master thief without being noticed. He'd try later after he talked to Yoshi, he promised himself with a grin. Naruto found Yoshi using a weird system of huge levers, cables, ropes and wheels to lower the left side of the elaborate gate into place. Yoshi was holding ropes with both hands and one foot. Huge magnifying glasses on his head, tongue sticking out the side of his mouth as he pulled and pushed, lowering the gate into place. As it snapped into position, the material of the gate shimmered and let loose a hum. Yoshi released the ropes and panted. "Phew! Finally! One down! Hey Naruto. Did you hear that? That hum? I call that Heavenstone harmonics. It happens when a lot of my Heavenstone touches the clouds." Naruto was fascinated. "Why does it do that?" Yoshi was gathering up his ropes and attaching them to the gate. "Huh! Oh! No idea!" he replied without even looking up. "Have you seen my phalange? Size 3/4 of a millimeter? I'm missing that from my kit." Naruto shook his head. He marveled at the ornate gate. Guerrera had designed a beautiful mold that Yoshi had used to cast the Heavenstone gates. It was beautiful, and shimmered in the sunlight. Its odd material reflecting and refracting light creating almost a rainbow effect. "Yoshi," Naruto asked, "you are coming to the guild feast tonight, right?" Yoshi nodded. Yes. Societal interactions are important in order to maintain good working relationships with citizenry." Naruto cocked his head quizzically. "What?" Yoshi straightened up. "You think I should put a doorbell?" "What?" Naruto replied. In case someone comes calling and no one's near the gate. How would we know they're here? Maybe a nice doorbell? Yoshi asked. Naruto thought about it for a few seconds. I suppose a bell would be okay. Yoshi looked at Naruto. That's a great idea. A bell. How on earth did you think of that? It makes sense, you know, just in case someone comes. He went back to attaching his ropes and cables to the other side of the gate. Naruto looked at him for a few seconds and then laughed. Yoshi, I'm real glad you crashed into our tower. See you later. He walked back to the Spirit Wolf Guild, waving to the inventor who smiled back happily. Senjai and Nagi sat at a table in the scroll room looking over a scroll. Ali had come in to talk to them about what they had found. Yes. This is the old language. This is the map of the old country. Ali confirmed. Nagi nodded. He pulled out a journal they had found and read a passage. And we came across a stone tablet with 3 skulls engraved on it. Upon the heads of the skulls were gold-adorned crowns. My men took then pried the gold from the stone. The jewels would be traded for food at the nearest outpost. But we're a week's ride east still from Abydos. Nagi looked up. From other scrolls that we have found, that symbol has to be the tomb of the 3 kings. And we have a general idea. Senjai pointed at the map. There, what does this say, Ali? Ali smiled. That says Abydos? You've found the location of the lost city of Abydos. You do realize though where this is in current times, right? Senjai nodded. He pulled out another map, a current one of the world, and laid it over the older scroll. We don't have a choice. This is where we need to start looking, Senjai said with a smile. Nagi cleared his throat. Guys, listen to this. He continued reading from the old journal. My men are dying one by one. Something comes for them at night. Rumors of a curse are all over the encampment. Our horses are all dead with no explanation. Their bodies are turning a sickly green color. I am not sure what to do. I hope we make it to Abydos. Nagi looked up. What do you think about that? Senjai smiled. I think it makes it a bit more exciting. What about you? Nagi and Ali laughed. Agreed, they said in unison. Think Naruto would come? Senjai asked. Come where? Naruto's head peeked into the room, his mouth stuffed with an eclair. Ali looked at him, and his face lost its smile. Is that one of our desserts in your mouth for our celebration feast later, Naruto? Naruto gulped and disappeared around the corner. Ali ran out the door after him. You will give that back immediately. I have a very specific head count to desert ratio, he said, screaming after him down the hallways of the guild and out into the front yard. Nagi smirked. Yeah, Naruto would come if he could. We'll ask Jiraiya if it's okay tomorrow. Tonight, though, we feast. Tomorrow we head for the city of Sunagakure. Tsunade sighed in relief as a young girl successfully identified all the organs in a toad. She was starting with a small class, some older citizens and young children. Less than 10. But still, it was a start to her medical trainees. They all stared at the dissected frogs in front of them a little squeamishly. Tsunade frowned at that. I need to break them of their sensitive stomachs. Medicine is no place for that foolishness. This basic biology lesson was going well. These students had, if not an aptitude, at least a willingness to learn, and that Tsunade could work with. She saw Naruto walk past her hospital happily, popping chocolate eclairs into his mouth. She smiled sadly. No one had told him as yet what had happened in Konoha. He didn't know about the war with the Wagakure and the state of affairs back home. She wondered idly for a second if it would bother him, but she shook that thought away. Naruto cared for his friends, and many of his friends still lived in Konoha. He would be worried. But they had specific instructions from Ma and Pa Toad not to disrupt his focus while he was training. She heard a sound like a clear crystal bell ring through the village and an arc of light that spread through the streets. It was gone in a second, followed by a shout of Eureka. The villagers who had looked concerned a second earlier just smiled and went back about their day. Tsunade scoffed and turned back to her class. Middle of nowhere, Asuma sat around the campfire with Kakashi, Sakura and the 2 girls that Sakura introduced as her teammates. The 2 girls watched him suspiciously, which he supposed he would do in their position. They did indeed seem to be a formidable team, dispatching the 3 Chunin that had accompanied him on this disastrous mission. He continued his story. So I woke up and discovered they had left without me. I caught up to them just as they attacked. We made fast time getting here in a couple weeks, full speed, very little rest. We had to intercept you before you reached the Wind Country border, or our mission would stand little chance for success. Kakashi nodded. It makes sense. So Danzo has declared himself a conquering emperor? Asuma nodded and sipped his tea. Yes. Ninja loyal to him have been growing. He's recruiting power-hungry nin from within the Iwagakure ranks as well. He's definitely building back his army, but it would probably be another year or two before he's at full strength. We lost a lot of ninja in that battle. Sakura wanted to cry, scream, and yell. She was both angry and saddened by what had happened to her home in just 1 year's time. When you left, you just told us you were going. Asuma began, but Kakashi cut him off. Now's not the time to speak of such things. What do you think you will do now? Kakashi asked. The girls noticed the odd exchange but said nothing. Asuma shrugged. Well, the mission failed. The prince will enter Wind Country in a few days, so there is no more chance for an easy assassination. From when they go to Lightning, then I understand that he intends to hire Konoha as his bodyguards on the last leg of his trip. But that will be a few months from now, and the political climate may have changed. Danzo may not want to kill him, or may even accept the pay to protect him, then kill him. There is nothing we can do about that. No way. Sakura shook her head. We won't allow it. Calamity nodded as well. We'll just have to protect them from Konoha until they reach their home. We never allow Danzo to kill the prince or his son. I'm very happy to hear you say that. The prince walked over, his girth swaying a little from side to side. If what you say is true, and your Hokage was hired by a courtesan from my land, then we need to get home sooner rather than later. My father would know what to do about it. I am sorry to say this, but it would be best if once we enter Wind Country we head for the nearest port and sail home. I will pay you to continue as our bodyguards until we reach home. Hiroka looked at him intently. You do realize that if your own people hired someone to kill you, then something bad might be waiting for you back home? Nonsense, the prince said dismissively. My father, the king, would never allow it. We will make the sailing arrangements. This has been a horrible trip. We didn't get to do any shopping at all. But I won't endanger my son with these assassination attempts. He turned to go. You know, my servants are whispering your names now, girls. They saw your fight today. They are calling you both celestial beauties from heaven and demon bitches from hell. You were indeed frightful. He walked back to the main encampment where his sons stood waiting. Calamity laughed. Well, the boys can call themselves archangels all they like, we're the demon bitches. Ha ha. Hiroka too laughed. Sakura looked dismayed. But, they also called us celestial beauties? Can't we stick with that? Sakura asked plaintively. No, Hiroka responded happily. This will strike more fear in people. It's fantastic. Kakashi sighed and smiled beneath his mask. Calamity grinned at him and winked, causing him to blush for the briefest of seconds. Asuma sipped his tea, pondering his situation. I have commitments in Konoha. I agree that this village you speak of sounds wonderful, Kakashi. But Konoha is my home as much as it is yours. I must go back. Kakashi nodded. Yes. I understand. It is likely that Danzo will punish you. Asuma scoffed. A few months in the jails will be pretty restful. He looked up at Kakashi over his tea, who gave him the slightest of nods. Asuma looked back down at his tea. You girls are strong. I didn't see the fight, but I saw the results. You are a good team, Asuma said quietly. Hiroka, Sakura, and Calamity all smiled. Sensei, Sakura asked, would you tell Ino that I'm alright? Asuma nodded and put his tea down. I will. Now tell me more about this village of yours. I won't leave until morning and I'd like to know all about it. Tengaku. Fireworks lit up the night sky over Tengaku. The crowd clapped appreciatively and cheered as more roared into the night, bursting into explosions of color. A trio of Ali's thieves were drumming away, one with small hand cymbals, one with his hands on a large drum around his neck, the other with 2 sticks on a smaller drum around his neck. The beat was intoxicating and exciting. Confetti and streamers flew everywhere. Music filled the street outside the Thieves' Guild. Ali was decked out in an elaborate suit that had as many ornate jewels on it as any rich merchant could dream of. It was in fact stolen from one such merchant. Naruto wore his white suit for the occasion on the insistence of Tenchi and Tsunade. Citizens smiled at him and shook his hand, thanking him profusely for their new lives and happiness. Naruto was bewildered as to what to do about all the gratitude and attention. Ali cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. The crowd quieted down as Ali stood on a small stage he had erected next to the entryway of his guild house. Tonight we mark the opening of our new home. As is the custom of my people, all neighbors must be welcomed into the home as if they are family. From tonight onwards, you are my family. You are our family. The Brotherhood of the Spirit Wolf recognizes the people of Tengaku as our brothers and sisters. The crowd cheered and spurred him on. Ali was grinning at the reception from the citizens. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought his clan would be this accepted. We welcome you into our home. In the name of Kali the warrior goddess, our patron and our guide, come inside. Share our food and wine. Welcome to the house of the Brotherhood, he bellowed, with fireworks timed to go off exactly as he finished the speech. They went off with a bang, showering red sparks on the crowd. Ali smiled widely. Thank goodness they fired those in time, Mabry said to Tenchi. I hear he threatened death to any clan member who mistimed their cue or failed in their assignment. Tenchi laughed and joined the surge as the crowd entered the building, heading for the banquet tables on the back lawn.